what's up? This is JM, host of the Celebrity Grill podcast on iTunes, and you're listening to the Barbecue Central Radio Network. All barbecue and grilling, all the time.
Let's go!
We'll do it live. Okay. Well, do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
So to get that perfect barbecue, you use wood. Are you sure it's safe? Whatever. We put the lighter fluid on, strike the match, and... Oh! Should we call the fire department? That might be a good idea.
All right, good evening, and welcome to the Really Big Barbecue Central Show, a show that talks about all things important in the world of barbecue and grilling, but you knew that. And it's the fourth Tuesday of the month, and that means we're wrapping up the origin stories. Tonight promises to be perhaps way longer than 2 hours. Derek Rich is coming up in just a few seconds. Rusty Monson leads the second hour, and when we're done with Rusty, we will get in with Doug Scheiding. John Solberg is off this evening, but don't worry, we will catch up with him. We just wish him and his family well. John, we're thinking about you, and I'll leave it at that. Without any further ado, we race to the hotline and bring back friend of the show and Barbecue Central Show guest Hall of Famer Derek Riches. Hey, Derek.
Hey, Greg, how you doing?
I am fine, and man, I'm excited to have you as we get ready to wrap up the month of origin stories. I didn't necessarily plan it like this, but I thought, why don't we go through and get the whole kit and caboodle of these regular guests, and if it proves to be something that's interesting, maybe I'll start tracking down some of the other barbecue luminaries and doing these bonus content type things. So we'll close out the month strong with you here in the first hour. So we'll get in the first handful of minutes here. We'll break, and then we'll get into the two longer interview segments as normal. So talk to us right from the beginning, Derek. When were you born, and where were you born?
I was born a long time ago.
Join the club. Longer every year, right?
Actually, my birthday was Saturday.
Really? Happy birthday. All right.
1966.
All right.
I was born on the outskirts of Salt Lake City, Utah.
So you were a Utah born and bred, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
I think we go back about 4 generations there. So.
Same place, or like within the same region, or did you move up and down the state?
Did I move around?
Well, I mean, like the family of 4 generations.
Yeah, not far. No, they did not. These were not people that went anywhere.
All right, nice.
I think I don't think. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's like my dad died probably 5 miles from where he was born.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. All right.
They're not travelers.
Well, I get that. So what was family life like growing up for you before the high school years? You know, those formative years of a young Derek Riches ankle biter running around.
Grew up kind of like in a little house. It was like right on the edge of the Wasatch Mountains. About a 15-minute walk, you'd be at a trailhead. So you could just, take off, go hiking. So a lot of my childhood was spent, in the mountains and traveling, around there, fishing, hiking, hunting. You note from when my birthday is, most of my birthdays as a kid were spent at deer hunt. I mean,
right.
So, that was kind of the extent of that.
Is that a different life growing up? I mean, I certainly wasn't near any big city as I was growing up. From what I can recollect, Saratoga Springs, New York, so upstate New York. Certainly, I was around mountains, but no real ass mountains like you were around.
Yeah, those are hills.
Right. So, is it something that as you talk to people and get to know them, they have similar life experiences growing up in that kind of an area, or are you more the exception to the rule?
I don't know. I mean, most of the people that, I grew up with, that was a big thing. It's like, they used to always they literally, I mean, like the opening day of deer hunt was an actual holiday. I mean, it's not an official one, but everything was closed, and the schools would close because no one would be there. So the outdoors was a really big part of just your life. And everybody had campers and RVs and tents and stuff, and people would clear out on the weekends. As a kid, it was kind of weird, particularly around, in the summer and stuff. I mean, if you were home on a Saturday and you went to the store, there was nobody there, versus now it's just like, always packed on the weekends. But
Sure.
it's just because everybody cleared out, there was more congestion Friday nights getting out of town than there was, during rush hour. It was just kind of the way it was back then. It's changed. It changed a lot over my lifetime because just, the whole area became much more urbanized, and, people just don't do that sort of thing, I guess, anymore.
Were you from a house, Derek, where your parents stayed together while you were growing up?
Yeah. My parents were both divorced before they married each other.
Wow.
So I have
That's
5
kind of a
half
different.
siblings.
I mean, it certainly wasn't commonplace, back then. I mean, if they were both divorced and then, married, I mean, that's not something that you heard about a lot back then.
Yeah, I was kind of an exception. I mean, I grew up in the not Mormon kid in a very Mormon neighborhood, and
State.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
It was worse in other places, but I mean, so
Sure.
it was. I had a very odd family. I mean, I used to always say that I have 2.5 siblings, and I actually have 2 brothers named Mike.
Really?
So, it's
So was the
my dad.
family dynamic one of a blended family coming in? Like your parents had kids respectively, or did they have some together?
Well, I'm the only kid they had together.
Okay.
My dad had 3 kids, but I wasn't raised with them, and we were never close. I didn't really know them very well. My mom had 2 boys, and I grew up with them, but they were a lot older than I was. So by the time I was about 10, they kind of moved on.
Hmm.
And after that, I was just kind of like the kid alone.
What kind of a age span are we looking at from the oldest child down to you?
The oldest is like 12 years older than I am,
All right.
but they're all very aged. So the youngest is about 8 years older than I am.
Hmm.
So, you have 5 kids in 4 years, but from 2 different families. So yeah, I was kind of the odd one out. I was always the little brother, the one that got thrown out windows or tied up and left so that
guinea
I
pig.
wouldn't get in the way of things. Yeah.
So, I mean, I would assume you were closest with your brothers, but as time has worn on, have those relationships just kind of faded, or has there been more of a concerted reconnection as you had gotten older to maintain ties?
I'm not really in a lot of contact with my siblings. I mean,
You
my
okay with
dad's
that?
kids.
No problem with that?
Yeah, I have no problem with it. They're very different from me. So, I mean, I have a brother who is a professor of epidemiology. And
Wow.
yeah.
He's
Assuming
he's
had a
pretty busy,
year.
right?
I would assume he's had a busy year.
Yeah.
I haven't talked to him, but
Hmm.
I'm sure he's busy. So, and another one, I don't really know what he's up to now. I think he kind of sort of retired or something. He's done all sorts of crazy jobs over the years. So,
Your parents still around?
no, well, see, my dad broke the cardinal rule of military service. Back in May of '52, he was stationed at Clovis Air Force Base in New Mexico, where he basically spent all day smoking cigarettes under a fuel truck, waiting for B-29s to land that, that would take off from Clovis, fly up to the Arctic Circle and back.
Yeah.
With their nuclear payload, because it's the 1950s.
Right.
And an officer came around and asked for volunteers, and he said, okay, why not? And so he got put in a cargo plane and flown to the Nevada nuclear test site. So he was actually witness to one of the last airdropped above ground nuclear tests on U.S. soil.
Wow.
So that shortened his lifespan quite a bit.
Yeah.
He never really got like leukemia or anything. He never got cancer. No one in his family's ever had cancer. I just don't have the genes for it, I guess. But it just messed with his DNA. He just aged faster and faster as time went by. And my mom died almost 5 years ago. So
we're going to take our first break here, and then we'll come back and talk about high school and getting into college here. So stand by. We're talking with Derek Riches, getting his origin story. Don't forget in the second hour, Rusty Monson, one of the embedded correspondents, one of the newest, or the newest, and then Doug Scheiding after him. Quickly, before we get back with Derek, I'll talk to you about Pits and Spits. Since 1983, handcrafting smokers and grills in Houston, Texas. In that time, Pits and Spits has established itself as one of the premier brands in high-quality offset smokers and more recently in pellet cookers, setting itself apart by using heavy 7 and 10-gauge steel in every cooker, fully welded construction that you can feel when you use the unit. 3 or 4 stainless roll-top lid and a front shelf on every single smoker. Why does that matter? Well, by using higher quality materials, Pits and Spits smokers reach and maintain temperatures, allowing you to worry more about the meat than the heat, providing a fully welded smoker that you don't have to worry about grease and smoke leaking out of the barrel. You don't have to worry about that grill rattling apart as you move it through the backyard as well. 3 or 4 stainless steel means you're getting an heirloom quality product that you can pass down to your kids as well. Now, while some companies focus on the low-cost provider sector, Pits and Spits focuses on craftsmanship and using quality materials. Are there cheaper ways to make these pits? Yes, but they don't like tack welds, cheap stainless, and electronics that you can't trust. Having in-house manufacturing gives them complete control of their design and standards. That's not something you're going to find in products brought in from overseas. Their steel suppliers supply material to be used in some of the harshest environments around, so they will perform in any and all conditions, and their controllers are made here right in the USA. So they're able to have unimpeded transparency into the programming. Pits and Spits is a dealer of a network of dealers across the country. If there isn't one close to you, call them at the shop, 844-650-6250. That's 844-650-6250, whether you're in the backyard or your competition team. Pits and Spits has the right product for you. You can check them out on their website, all spelled out, Pits and Spits. That's double T's. On both sides, pitsandspits.com, or see their Pits in the Wild across all social media handles, at Pits and Spits, all spelled out as well. Or Derek Riches coming up shortly. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the #1 most downloaded barbecue and grilling podcast anywhere. The Barbecue Central Show. Broadcasting live from the Barbecue Central Show studios in Cleveland, Ohio. You're listening to the Barbecue Central Show. Once again, here's your host, Greg Rempe.
All right, welcome back. This portion of the show being brought to you by Butcher's Barbecue, makers of award-winning spices, rubs, marinades, grilling oils, everything that you need to be a successful pitmaster. Tried and true on the competition trail and in backyards. Stock up now over at butcherbbq.com. That's butcherbbq.com. Always trust your butcher. And we're back with Derek Riches. Derek, thanks for hanging with me through the break there. All right, so let's talk about, I guess let me ask you quickly, since your dad had kind of passed prematurely, I guess you're speculating that the above-ground nuclear test that he was witness to might have had a hand in that. So when he passes away, sooner than expected, how does that affect you?
Well, I mean, by sooner than expected, it wasn't I mean, I was about 30. So, um, and it was something we knew was coming for a long time. Just, you know, he'd been to every doctor and they basically like, well, it's radiation damage
Hmm.
just over a very long period of time. And, so that's just, the way that is. Would have been nice if, there had been a compensation package or something for that, but yeah, yeah. Somehow they lost all his military records in a big fire in St. Louis,
Hmm.
Missouri. Yeah.
Ironic.
Ironic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Almost everyone who was witness to a nuclear test had their records there.
And
Strange.
and
What a
up it
coincidence.
went. That's right.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Yeah, hard to imagine that. Derek, what was high school like when you get into there? I mean, that can be a tough time for a lot of folks, but how were the high school years for you, and what were you into?
I was, well, kind of again, being the not Mormon kid in an extremely Mormon part of the world, I tended to be the kid that your parents warned you about, but for no other reason than the fact that I just didn't go to the church they all did.
Aha.
So, I just, high school was largely uneventful, but I just kind of, I guess in a way I kind of played into that a little bit. I got into punk music and was kind of rebellious, but I got really good grades, so nobody complained about anything.
No sports or any extracurriculars like that?
No, I was well, when I was really little, I had rheumatic fever. And it was really bad. And kind of one of the long-term side effects of that is that you can suffer from kind of long-term joint pain. So a lot of my teenage years, it's like my knees were just always in pain.
Hmm.
So anytime I did anything athletic, I would just go home, put ice packs in my knees for hours. And so I didn't really get involved in a lot of that.
No other clubs or anything outside of sports?
No.
Yep.
Yeah, no, not really. I mean, we had an electronics class that I did a lot of stuff in there in high school and did a lot of, built radios and did a lot of, 80s level technology.
What year are you getting out of high school then?
I graduated in 85.
85, all right. So good grades, leaving at 85. Are you adept at going right to college at that point, or what was the mindset as you're leaving high school then?
Yeah, I just kind of went straight into college. I went to the University of Utah, which was about 15 miles away. I got a job up there, and as opposed to today, tuition was very reasonable, and so I just kind of stayed in college for like 8 years.
Nice. Were you going in with a major in mind, or were you going in to see where the wind blew you?
Well, I mean, I kind of went in with the idea of electrical engineering. And after about 2 years of that, decided it was way too much work for what I was willing to put in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the math and the physics and the chemistry and then the engineering courses. Plus, you're competing, I was working a lot and, competing with kids who are on scholarship and, who don't have to do anything else but study. And I had to do all these other things. So, I just, decided I'm just going to take whatever interests me. So there's about 6 years of that.
So do you graduate from college?
Yeah. I have a bachelor's in history and a bachelor's in philosophy.
Wow, worthless.
Yeah, I was close to. I mean, if I'd been willing to go back for a second year of calculus, I could have done the bachelor's in mathematics. But I also,
all of those majors reek of you're going to teach somewhere. I worthless, yeah. I say tongue in cheek, because to me that's like you're doing that because maybe you're not passionate about something specific and you've just accumulated credits like you have, or you're taking those because you know that I want to get out of here and this is a class I want to teach, in middle school or high school or get a master's and then go into the collegiate level or something along these lines?
I am not. I'm not generally a very good teacher when it comes to something like that. I'm too unstructured in the way I do things. So yeah, I had no aspirations of teaching ever.
So taking the long-term college route, which by the way I wholeheartedly agree with on many different levels, especially back then, even when I went to college at OU, I paid for the last year because I was on the 5-year plan. My parents paid for the first 4 years. I paid for the 5th year. I think all in for the year, I took a loan out for $5,500. My daughter goes to a Division II school right now out east of Pittsburgh. It's $52,000 a year. So from 97 to 2019 when she started, it's a dramatic increase all across the board. Division II, III, Division I, you name it. State school, private school, what have you. However, you've also mentioned that you've worked through college. So that's a whole different chain of responsibility there because you are holding down a job and making money, I would assume, to help offset the cost of college. But then you also have your study responsibilities as well. So what jobs are you holding down through that time?
Several things. What I did is I got jobs that part of the benefit of the job was half off of your tuition. So I could pay as I went. I could actually make enough money, to support myself and come up with the tuition money. So when I graduated, I had no loans. I had none of that sort of stuff. So so that was good that way. You know, um, Before I started college, I worked for a year as a bicycle mechanic when I was in high school. And then I worked in the Fine Arts Museum for a while. And then I worked in their main research library, and that kind of just evolved into, but, when I graduated, I just kind of went from what I was doing into an IT position there.
Hmm.
So, I was doing okay. I mean, I wasn't raking in money, but I was getting by.
So that was the first job out of college then, technically, was an IT job?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Did you think you were going to be in IT going forward at that point, or did you know it was a job versus a career and there were other callings for you?
Well, I mean, I didn't like, there's certain things I didn't like about it. I mean, there were times when, a work shift was 24 straight hours because there was something wrong. I mean, I was doing network administration for a department that had horribly underfunded its network for years. And so it was just cobbled together crap. And, it was a lot of time fixing what was there while trying to build something that would actually work. And, as time went by, I just lost any passion for it. I know how computers work at this point, but I'm not really interested in working on them.
Yeah.
It's just, it was a lot of work, and, it was like, some people are like, oh, well, you're a professional and you're doing a professional position. And other people like, you're kind of janitorial. You fix stuff sort of thing. And it's like, I don't need this. I really don't. So, I was always kind of trying to figure out something else to do.
So at some point there's the tipping mindset where you're at the job and you're not going to be there. So are you now on the lookout for something else, or how does the next job transition happen?
In the 90s, when all the .com started coming up, I was trying to work to get positions into, some of these tech companies, these startups, stuff like that. But, a lot of them, it was like relocate to Palo Alto and maybe you can get on a list to get into a position, or, if you lived in New York City, we might be able to find something for you. I did a couple of, kind of side projects here and there for a while. But, nothing really ever panned out. And, I was really consistently picking losers that would die in the bubble burst, in 2000. So, if I knew then what I know now, I think I probably could have picked a better path, but it was kind of hit and miss with all of that.
If I could back it up just for a second, as you get through high school, and I guess, did you come back home every now and again through college like, normal kids would do, breaks and whatnot? Or once you were at college, did you pretty much stay out there?
Well, I went home on Sunday to do my laundry.
Oh yeah, because you were like 10 miles from home. That's right.
Away.
That's right.
Or if I was really hungry.
Yeah. So what's the food scene for you like back then? Are you somebody that is being brought into the kitchen, or are you bringing yourself into the kitchen to see how food is made? Is your family not necessarily a culinary family per se? How did it look like for you?
I wouldn't say that either of my parents are very good cooks. My mother had a very basic education in English cooking from, like her mother and her grandmother, with a couple of Danish dishes thrown in there, but that was pretty much all she knew. And my dad knew nothing about cooking. But, when I was a teenager, my dad was, actually from when I was pretty young, probably from 10 onward, my dad became an avid gardener. We lived on a pretty big plot of land, and he carved out this massive garden. And so every fall, he would, it would be like, harvest everything, and everything got, canned or frozen or whatever. So, I grew up on homemade pickles and salsa, tomato sauces. My mother made a pretty good tomato jam. I would really like to have another jar of that if I could get it. Pretty much anything you can buy in a pre-made in a can today, they made and just canned themselves at home. So that was kind of like the culinary world for me, was that sort of canning and food preserving process. The 3 days it took to make a year's worth of pickles, the day that I would spend grinding tomatoes so we could make salsa. And everywhere, all of it, every ingredient that went into it, corn, green beans, every type of squash you can imagine. He grew potatoes. I don't know why anyone would grow potatoes, because they're really cheap to buy. But, he there's a certain survivalist mentality in him. And I think he just felt that, why buy if you can make it yourself?
Sure.
We just didn't have chickens. I think that would have been it. Would have been kind of the whole thing if he'd raised chickens.
Was there
We also lived on venison and stuff like that quite a bit.
Oh, I was going to say, with the hunt that you were talking about, I'm sure game was a fairly big portion of it. Was there any like live fire introduction for you at that point?
Well, yeah, but it was, all along, because there was always campfire cooking. And my dad had this 1930 something Coleman stove that he'd got from his dad, that, whenever we'd go camping or, whatever, he'd cook everything on. But yeah, a lot of just like campfire cooking, the stuff you throw in the fire and the stuff you cook over the fire. We would do that. We'd go, like when we'd go fishing, catch trout, and, just clean them and cook them and eat them as they were coming out of the water a lot of times. So, so that was always that element.
All right.
Plus, my dad actually invented barbecue. So,
thank God.
If
let's leave that as an aside.
Okay, we'll leave that aside for a minute, but it's an interesting story.
How has one become so lucky to have their dad be the one credited for inventing barbecue?
I didn't say he was the first person to invent barbecue.
Oh, no.
He invented it independently on his own.
Oh.
So, like I said, we lived on a big plot of land, and it had once been an orchard. So it was cherry trees and apricot trees.
Nice.
And they were all ancient, because this was this orchard had been planted in like the 19th century. And so we always had tons of fruit wood, and we just, burned it, firewood, fireplace, whatever.
Right.
But when I was a little kid, the guy who lived next door to us had been a commander in the U.S. Navy. And he'd been stationed in Japan in the 60s, and he had brought back with him this weird big ceramic green thing that he called a hibachi. And when he moved, he was like, well, this thing's so fragile and it's been shipped around so much, because he'd brought it back on an aircraft. He'd had it smuggled on an aircraft carrier to get it from Japan. I mean, he was a commander, so he had some clout, I guess.
Sure.
So he just gave it to my dad. And so my dad was like, well, it's a grill, we'll just grill on it. But what my dad kind of realized was, this is my dad again. He doesn't buy stuff. You don't have to buy charcoal when there's all this wood lying around. You just need to get the wood burning in the grill itself and just burn that. So, he didn't buy charcoal. And he also realized that, if you kind of adjusted this thing right, you could cook almost anything on it. You could cook at lower temperatures. You could roast on it. It wasn't just grilling steaks. And so he just kind of played around with the idea of it. So I grew up eating roasts, and it was like chuck roast or pork loin roast or stuff like that he would cook on this, but he realized that the longer he cooked it, the more tender it was. So he would just kind of dial it down and let it cook all day long. And then that's what we would eat. And, he didn't know what barbecue was. I mean,
he's inventing it right there, pretty much.
He's never been east, the farthest east he's ever been is Chicago.
Yeah.
And that was, just to fly to Chicago. And other than that, the edge of the Rocky Mountains was about as far as he would go, because he hated flatland so much. So, years later, I'm like 20 and I'm visiting a friend down in Austin, Texas. And I get off the plane. He's like, all right, we're going to go get you some barbecue. And he's like, you've never eaten anything like this before in your life. And I'm kind of like, well, actually, it's kind of like the way my dad used to cook a lot. I mean, it's similar. So, that's kind of where I got introduced to barbecue. Was not barbecue, but something very similar to it. And then when I actually got to try barbecue, I was like, hey, this is actually quite good. I'd like to do more of this.
Very interesting story.
By that point, that big green hibachi thingy in my parents' backyard had disintegrated into a pile of rust.
I was going to say, is there any way that you have that somewhere?
I know. I would love to. I would love to still have it.
Oh, I bet.
I've tracked a few down online that are like in good condition, but the price and then the shipping is insane.
So, I mean, that's a really good introduction to barbecue, even though, who knew at the time that you were partaking in really a Southern delicacy that a lot of other people knew about, and your dad was learning it all on his own. We get back to kind of present day, as it were, at that period of time. So the professional side is, a little spotty per se. You don't really have a defined career path that you're rolling down yet, but I assume at some point there unfolds a love story. You get married, all that good stuff. So regale us, if you will, Derek, of a love story between you and your wife, and how you meet and how that story unfolds. You're
actually assuming a lot, aren't you?
Sure. I love love. I mean, who doesn't love love? So.
Well, it's not like we talk a lot. So, so I was working at the library at the university. I had not started working in IT. I was working in one of the management departments. And, I walk through one day and I see this young woman across, over in another department. I think it was like literally the first day she worked there. I see her and I look at her and I knew right there. I mean, it was an epiphany. She is way out of my league.
Nice.
I mean,
knockout.
Yeah. I mean, so I just put that aside, put that straight out of my head because, dash hopes are awful. So, but a couple of months later, we're kind of working together and we get talking and, I asked her out and she agreed. And the weird thing of it is that the first place I took her was a barbecue joint.
In Utah?
Yeah, it was like the only one. It wasn't terribly authentic. It was close. I mean, it was better than Tony Roma's. I'll put it at that. For those who remember Tony Roma's, they're not still around, are they?
Maybe in pockets, but I think most of them have dried up.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
But yeah, and everything proceeded very quickly from that point onward.
Like, how quickly are you dating to when you get married? Like, is it a year, like that kind of quick, or
it's like 6 months
from when you dated till you were married?
Yeah,
our first date this guy, smooth operator. So you must have had some kind of rap going.
It's just everything was just perfect. Everything just was great. We got along amazingly well. We liked all the same stuff. Well, for the most part, we don't agree necessarily in music, but aside from that, we have kind of similar personalities, similar outlooks, and we dated. Our first date was the beginning of February, and we got married at the end of August.
Wow. So do you get any static or do either of you get any static from the parents going, hey, maybe a little quick to the finish line here?
No, not really. Yeah. I mean,
did you even care anyway? Like, who cares?
Yeah. Well, no, I didn't care at all. She might have. Her parents weren't against it. I was 26. She was 22. So she was a little young. But yeah, no, my parents were just, whatever.
Do you start having kids fairly quickly then, or how does that work out?
Our daughter was born about a year and a half later.
All right. So you have a little honeymoon time there?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. All right. Is that the only kid you got?
Yeah.
All right. Oh, and she's the one that was like trapped in limbo or something a couple months ago from whatever was going on there.
She'd moved out to Boston a couple of years ago. She's 25 now. Kind of finish up her school stuff, and then her boyfriend was still in school at Boston and had like a semester to finish when everything shut down. Mm-hmm. And so Boston's rents are insane, and they closed all the school dorms and everything like that. So they kind of had to leave Boston, and but his parents live down in Virginia, so that's where she is now.
Got it.
Kind of, I feel bad for people in their 20s right now, because it's like, what do you do? If you can work, you can work, but it's kind of hard right now.
Growing up from a parental standpoint, how do you feel you and your wife were as parents raising a kid? Was that a enjoyable experience, or what do you how do you look back on those 18 years before you turn her loose?
Well, you've done it a lot more than I have, so you probably have more insights than I do. Raising an only child might be different though, because they don't have anyone else to play with.
I can tell you that by the time the third one comes, you don't care.
I would assume. Yeah.
Oh, the baby fell on the floor. No problem.
Yeah. I think we tried to achieve that level of indifference quickly, but it didn't pan out entirely. So, but no, I think I don't know. I think we did an okay job. I think she's who she is.
Would you say she's a fierce, independent, strong woman and contributor to society?
She is definitely fierce and
Yeah.
independent.
All right.
And she is also um, just an avid artist.
Oh.
And she has that artist personality, and from when she was little. I mean, 4 or 5, if there was some project that she wanted to get involved in, nothing else mattered. Food didn't matter, bed, sleep time didn't matter, nothing else mattered whatsoever. It had to be done. Um, we bought we bought Scotch tape by the caseload because she would just tape everything, make these Scotch tape sculptures and paper and whatever she could find. And she still she still has that kind of passion. She'll just disappear for a couple of days, and it's because she's doing a painting. And
Nice.
no one is, the phone goes off and you can't talk to her. So it was a little weird when she moved away and you couldn't get in touch with her for a couple of days. Like, are you all right? And she'd pop up and go, why did you text me 67 times? Because it's been 4 days. Where have you been? I was painting. So she's like that.
Where does barbecue journalism start?
Okay, so my dad invented barbecue. We just
Wait a second. Before we get into that, let me do one more break here before we get into the barbecue stuff here. I apologize.
Okay.
And we'll come back and learn that story because, as we've learned here, Derek's dad has invented barbecue, which is wonderful. SouthsideMarket.com is the place to go to get all your sausages and everything else that Southside makes. Their barbecued meats, briskets, and ribs, established in 1882. Oldest barbecue joint in Texas, owned and operated by the same family for 3 generations. Premium Central Texas barbecue products, slow smoked over real wood, shipping, distributing, manufacturing sausages for companies across the U.S. From food trucks to multi-chain restaurants, Southside sausage can be on your menu as well. All meats are processed in the on-site USDA-inspected facility. A trusted partner with a focus on quality and authenticity. Shipping nationwide via FedEx or through food service distribution channels, Sysco, U.S. Foods, and Martin Foods. Co-packaging capable from research and development to package completion. They can also follow your recipe or help you develop something brand new. Private label opportunities also available. SouthsideMarket.com is a place to go to shop online. 10% off all of your orders through that website. With promo code BBQ Central, all one word, lowercase. That's BBQ CENTRAL, BBQ Central. And that's 10% off at SouthsideMarket.com each and every time. All right, now we will get the live fire story from Derek Riches. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Howard Stern, Jim Rome, Dan Patrick, and Greg Rempe. The Mountain Rushmore of talk show entertainment. Now, let's get back to the Barbecue Central Show.
All right, the show brought to you by cookinpellets.com, COOKIN, cookinpellets.com, your number one resource for quality wood pellets for all your pellet-driven cookers. Again, that's cookinpellets.com. All right, Derek, sorry to cut you off there as I teased everybody and then pulled it all away. It's what we do here in the biz. So, barbecue journalism, where does it start?
So like I had said, in the mid to late 90s, I'm kind of checking out a lot of these, .com companies. And I see a listing for a site for this new business. It's not it's not available. They're just starting up, and they're looking for people to, in essence, do kind of web development and curating for different topics. Now, like I said, in my early 20s, I had a friend who had moved. He was from Texas, and he had lived in Salt Lake for a while, and then he moved back. Was living in San Marcos, and I'd flown down and visited him and then driven out to Galveston because my brother was at medical school there. And so, I kind of got the taste for barbecue then. And then a few years later, I got married, and the first thing, my wife buys me a grill, and then I got one of those Brinkman. They used to call them the R2D2 units, a little Brinkman water smoker thing. And so I was making barbecue and all that sort of stuff. So this company, they're advertising for people to curate topics. And I tried out for punk music, but some snot-nosed kid who doesn't know jack beat me to it. So I tried out for their barbecue and grilling topic. And they're like, hey, you can do this. And it was like, their goal in life was to be, okay. So, back in the late 90s, Yahoo was everything. If you wanted to find something on the internet, you went to Yahoo.
Yes.
They were going to be the intelligent Yahoo. They were going to have experts in fields curate the websites that were listed in there and kind of provide explanation, supplementary information. And they had a bunch of startup money. So they were like, hey, you do this 10, 15 hours a month, just kind of putting stuff together, going through and doing this. We'll give you $200. So I'm like, hey, why not?
A month?
So I started. Yeah, I know it wasn't a lot of money, but the thing of it is that the job I had kept me kind of in a space for a long period of time, but took about 3 to 4 hours a day to do it. So I had to be there for 8 hours, but I had a lot of time to kill and unlimited internet access and computer access. So I just said, oh, okay, I can do this. They give me $200 a month. So I started doing it. And I don't know, about a year or so goes by. The thing goes public. People can start reading stuff. And I start getting questions from people. They're emailing me and they're asking me which grill to buy. And I have no idea. I don't know anything. I mean, I know I have a grill, and I've used a couple of different grills. My parents had one of the first year Genesis from Weber. I'd used a bunch of other stuff. So I just start researching stuff, and I'm answering people's questions, thinking, okay, this is what you do. So then I start compiling all this information together and start putting it out on the website. And I'm kind of the first person to do this. Nobody.
What year is this exactly?
Well, I started doing product information in 98.
Oh, okay.
And really, really ramped up in 99 and 2000. It was really preliminary in 98. But, nobody else had that kind of information. There just wasn't anything anywhere unless you were going to go buy a copy of, Consumer Reports. You couldn't go online and see any of it because Consumer Reports wasn't online in those days. So traffic just started pouring in. Well, this company I started working for became something called about.com, and they started paying per page view. And at first, they were way overpaying. They totally overestimated how much ad revenue they could generate. So they had made commitments to pay a pretty substantial amount of money, and I started just generating a lot of traffic. By the time they start going, hey, we have to cut back on how much we're paying per page view, affiliate marketing had come up. So we could do Amazon affiliate marketing and, through other, through a number of other companies and like that. So, I don't know, 1 in 500 people would buy a grill that was looking at the site, but I was generating 20 million pages a month at at one point. And
are you making, is about.com paying you $1 million a year?
No.
All right.
I probably made them $1 million a year, but they only paid me half of what I made them.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have to deal with servers. I didn't have to do design work.
Right.
I didn't have.
You were just the brains.
Management. I didn't have to do any of the structural work. All I had to do was sit down and go in the system and write content. So I could just, that's all I had to focus on. When you have to run your own website, and you have to do all the technical stuff yourself. That can, consume 3 days for some stupid thing one day.
There's an hourly rate assessed to that eats back at your growth. Yeah.
And the company got bought by the New York Times. And so I was using New York Times press credentials to travel with. So I call it Memphis in May, say, hey, I'm with the New York Times Corporation and I want to come to Memphis in May. And, can I get a press pass? And they're like, yeah, we'll give you full VIP passes and, someone who will run around with you if you need it. You want a cart to drive you around? I'm like, no, I'm good. But, getting into trade shows and the perks were great, but there's the other side of it. And that is that, you have to do all of this research on product information, and every 3 years, Weber would completely revamp its entire line of products. Charcoal 1 year, gas grills the next year, then, everything else the year after that. Charbroil just changes everything every year. And so you had to keep up on all that. So, I was doing well. I had good perks, I had good pay, and I was working 80 hours a week.
So that's a time commitment on your part for the most, or are you also making expenditures out of your own in order to make sure that you're getting everything? I assume you could reach out and say, this is who I am, and send me all your stuff, and they're happy to do it. But I would also assume that there is a potential of conflict of interest if somebody wanted to dig down and say, oh, well, they're giving it to you, and are you really going to be honest in a review on something that you've gotten for free?
That's a really hard line, because you're right. Companies would contact me and say, hey, here's our product catalog, what do you want? Other companies, you contact them and say, I'm looking for demo units, or I'm looking for this or that. Some of them would just say, screw you, we don't want to deal with you. And some of them would be like, yeah, okay, we can arrange for that. All I can really say is that, I put all the information that I could get out of a product into a database, tested everything out I could, and then I let the database tell me if it was good or not. I basically wrote algorithms to say, well, this actually comes out on top because it scores better the way you're rating it. Maybe I haven't always come up with the best system of determining that, but a lot of people have called me out over the years, but I go in and I say, okay, why, what's the problem, and why did I miss something, or are they missing something? Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's me, and so I would go back and say, okay, let's reevaluate this and see what I can do with it. I have a lot of relationships with, people in the business. The people that I've known for 20 years. Sometimes I love their products and sometimes I don't. And the really good people to work with are the ones that will go, yeah, you don't necessarily like our products, but we like what you're doing for the business. Because my goal has always been, when I'm writing something, I'm addressing the first time person. First time someone buys a grill, first time someone buys a smoker, first time someone tries to cook a steak. And I go, if you're successful at that, if you get the thing that works best for you, if you have a satisfying experience with either your new cooker or your new cooking method or whatever, you're going to come back. You're going to go, hey, this was good information, but I'm going to do more of this. It's awful when somebody buys, a crappy product. It does not work and they're done. They're not cooking outdoors anymore. They're like, no. And it was too much work. It was, those late night Ronco commercials were right. Grilling is too hard to do. Charcoal explodes. It kills people.
Causes cancer.
Causes cancer. It pesters the neighbor's dogs. It does all sorts of horrible things. I'm just not, for me, it's if a person has a good experience, they're going to do more of it. And that grows the business. It grows what all of us do. And, with any luck, they'll come back to me for more answers or more information or more ideas. And that's kind of always been my way of looking at it. If you put the consumer first, then the companies are going to have to deal with you. The manufacturers. I mean, I'm not saying people haven't tried to sue me. And I'm not saying that there's a certain person that actually threatened to kill me, but
Really?
yeah.
Name them.
No.
Really?
Yeah. And it was a trade
What does
show.
their name sound like? What does it rhyme with?
Herman Tin.
I think we first came together while you were at about.com. But over time that has evolved. I think the next time it was the spruce.com, and eventually you've landed at DerekRiches.com. So how does that track run?
I think that there came an idea in the company. There was a group of us. I mean, at one point they had over 1,000 of us writing for the company.
Wow.
And we were specialists in everything you could conceive of. I mean, we would have these big conferences in New York, and they'd rent out all this stuff and spend $1 million, and we would get together and have a week of stuff. And there was probably not a question someone could think of that people in that room didn't know the answer to. I mean, just an incredibly smart group of people, and some of them were doing incredible business, $1 million a year. And, and I think they just got this idea. It's like, hey, we have people who are making money on something they wrote 10 years ago, and we're still paying them for it. And why are we doing that? So they decided they wanted to go a different direction. And they also felt that they would make a lot more money in advertising if their product reviews had a certain, how do you put it, incentive from the manufacturer built in.
Uh-huh.
So some of the top 10 lists, some of the, the best of the best, well, there are items on that list that are paid to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And I refused to do that. I wasn't going to be part of it. So I just kind of like, all right, I'm going to write my way out and quietly, and I'm going to go off and do my own thing for a while. And that's kind of the way it went. I basically retired for about a year, but I have written 10,000 pieces of content over the years. And some of it is scattered across a dozen different websites. I mean, half of it still has my name on it. Half of it doesn't, but it's out there, and I was like, I've got tons of stuff. So why don't I just put a bunch together and just play with it a little bit? I don't have to deal with the don't offend someone ideas that I used to have to, I mean, if I want to call out a company and say, hey, you're screwing up and here's what's wrong with you, then, I can be a little bit more vocal about that. I can be a little bit more of an advocate that way. And not have to worry about, someone in corporate going, hey, what's the deal with this? I mean, not that they really ever did, but, I mean, someone at Charbroil told about.com bosses that I was on the board of directors of Weber.
Oh, good for you.
And that's what I know. I'm like, one, at the time it was still family owned. So I would have to have actually married my way in to be on the board of directors. Two, they didn't really have a board of directors. Three, if I was on the board of directors, I would have quit all of that a long time ago because I would be making so much money, particularly when the company sold. But, those are pesky things you have to explain to .com overlords every once in a while, and usually they're like, okay, we get it, you're not crooked, they're crazy. So, but now I don't have to worry about that sort of stuff, and I can just be me and set my own schedule and not work 80 hours a week.
There was a time that you had stopped doing my show, partly, maybe solely, because there was, I don't know if you would call it a competition, or maybe there was just a differing opinion on your site at the time. I don't know if it was about.com or not, or bbq.about.com, and Amazing Ribs, and who was bigger, who was badder, blah, blah, blah. As a host, having access to both you and Meathead, it was great for me because you guys were similar, but obviously worlds apart in a number of different facets. Has that resolved itself in any way, or like have you talked at all, or is it just like it's open and it's just over with, but it's still open, or how does that? Where does that sit in 2020?
I greatly respect what he's done. I mean, he's put together something absolutely amazing. I mean, he's really good at marketing, something I'm not good at. And he's very compelling. But we have you're right. We have a very different style about things and some differences of opinions. We used to talk quite a bit. We, emailed back and forth, talked on the phones. As a matter of fact, at one point, we had some discussion about me taking over all the product related content for Amazing Ribs.
Oh.
And I was like, yeah, this sounds like a great idea. It wasn't terribly lucrative at the time. I mean, it would have become quite lucrative probably. I mean, I don't really know what kind of money he does. But it became a logistical issue.
Sure.
It was just my time and the fact that I would, in essence, have to write everything twice when I didn't have enough time to write everything once. And so, I just kind of like, we negotiated it out, we talked it out, and I was like, this I think would be a great opportunity, and maybe I'm dumb for not pursuing it, but and I don't have any regret about it.
Yeah.
I mean, we were communicating when he was still just Craig, back in the earliest days of Amazing Ribs. So, and if I could go back and change it, I wouldn't. I did extraordinarily well, and I'm proud of the work I did, and I'm proud of the work I do now. But I just have a different lifestyle at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not interested in killing myself. Literally. I just can't imagine doing that into my 60s, being that driven and traveling that much and doing all the things I did when I was in my 40s. So I have a different life now. I want to have fun with that. Barbecue should be enjoyable, and I want to enjoy it. That's kind of where I'm at in my life.
So I guess the last question I have isn't the best question for the answer that you just gave, which was, do you see yourself not doing this at some point? So I guess the better question revised is, when do you see yourself getting out of this now?
That's a really good question.
I had to have one.
Yeah.
And it was a revision on the fly, I might add. Thank you very much. I'll be here next hour. Thank you. Go ahead.
I can, I mean, I do see myself kind of not doing this. And I have been working on a couple of other projects.
Industry related?
Let's say slanted,
mm-hmm.
instead of kind of the same sort of thing. But nothing, with any luck, if I can keep up to my own schedule, we'll have something to talk about in about 6 months.
Oh, great. All right.
But that's the best I can tell you right now.
Well, the best that I can tell everybody right now on my side is you go to DerekRiches.com and read everything that he's putting up there, because it's always compelling and it's always unbiased. As I like to say, at least in my opinion, one of the most respected live fire journalists, if not the only live fire journalist out there right now. And you can find him on this show, the fourth Tuesday of every month. And that is Derek Riches' origin story. Derek, hopefully this has at least met expectation. Maybe you didn't have any expectations going in, which maybe was probably a better idea. But I think it's always important here to show that the folks that I'm talking to, especially in this day and age, there's a very quick turn a coin to say it just happened overnight or they were lucky. And I could have also lucked into that as well. But when you get the actual history and run back, you see that there has been any number of years and decades involved in getting into the successful position that you guys are in now, and the folks that I have here on the show. And secondarily, we had a really good run the first time, and I was always disheartened when you decided to step away from the show, and I respected the reasons that you were stepping away from the show. But the fact that we were able to reconnect and start doing this once a month again has been a real joy for me, because I really respect what you do, and I like the slant that you bring to the show. And again, it seems that the regular guys and gals that I have here on the show, I've actually met in person, and it's only been once, maybe twice. But we have met in person too. So I just want you to know that I appreciate you and what you bring to the show every month, and thanks for doing it.
Well, thanks for having me on, Greg. I appreciate it. It's nice to have something like this.
It's my pleasure, and we will see you in November, if you can believe it. My goodness. All right, there he is, Derek Riches. Hopefully you enjoyed getting Derek's origin story. That was fantastic. A lot of stuff there that I didn't know about. And Rusty Monson is in already. So let me do this as we wrap up the first hour. Got to do this for podcast stuff. Green Mountain Grills. Do you like those? Yes. Rusty Monson cooks all his chicken on Green Mountain Grills, believe it or not. That's all he cooks on it. Go to greenmountaingrills.com and you can check out the Choice line and the Prime line. They have a host of accessories as well. They sell through dealers, so go to greenmountaingrills.com and see where the nearest dealer is to you. And then go to that store, if they allow you, and check out all the products. They are trained and will answer all your questions, so you have immediate experience right out of the gate. Again, that's greenmountaingrills.com. greenmountaingrills.com, and we are back to get Rusty Monson's origin story right after this. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Helen Paradise from SoCal, and you are listening to the Barbecue Central Show.
Happy to have you aboard here for the Really Big Barbecue Show.
Boing. We cook because we have to, and we grill because we want to.
Hit me!
Fine, how's it going?
You have a great show. I'm a big fan.
Boing.
So what seems to be the problem here? This man looks like he's dead, and he's in the crackle. Charbono! It's all about the charbono, dude.
Succulent fish. What?
He ate sushi or wieners.
Oh, listen, Liberty, shut your face.
I'm shaking like a dog shit peach seed. We have top men working on it right now. Top men.
All right, just like that, we are into the second hour, and it's the Barbecue Central Show, doing Barbecue Central Show things, rounding out the origin stories. And we go right to the hotline and welcome in the newest embedded correspondent, Rusty Monson. Hey, Rusty.
Hey, how's it going?
What's up, Rusty?
Chilling, just, chilling.
I look in the back over your left shoulder, and I think there's like somebody sitting there at a desk behind you, but there's nobody sitting there.
That's why I put on my pretentious award.
Just in my periphery. All right, so we're doing origin stories. You caught the last part of Derek Riches, who a long time Utahian? Is that a Utah person?
City of Utah.
Yeah. Oh, see, we say like Ohioan, but is there something for Utah?
City of Utah.
All right. City of Utahian. Yes, Derek. Long time City of Utahian.
Yeah, Utahian. Yeah, it's weird, dude. No, that doesn't work at all. We need to think of something. It's
from
hard.
Utah, from the city of Utah, and we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it.
All right. So, Rusty, when and where were you born?
I was born in American Fork, Utah in 1977. So if you guys have seen Footloose with Kevin Bacon, that was the town I was born and raised in. It was just like that. Literally just like that movie. That movie is, if anyone wants to know what it was like for me growing up, I was Kevin Bacon in Footloose. And yeah, I could actually, I never worked at the roller mills, which is, the prominent place he worked. But that's how I grew up. That's exactly it. I didn't dance though. I should have. I didn't know there was so much dance space in Lehigh until I watched that movie. So now that, but it was, that was it. That's how it was.
What was it like growing up for you previous to high school? Like as a young rug rat, or somebody that had a lot of friends that you palled around with and got into stuff, or, what was a young Rusty like?
Well, I was kind of a latchkey kid, so my mom and dad both worked, and we would go to school and come home, and we're left to our own devices. So yeah, we had a lot of free ranging. We were very free range kids, so we had a big old property we'd live on, and we'd just do all the things we could do, just wherever. Yeah, just come home when the lights turn on. In the streets, kind of kids. So yeah, we grew up in the neighborhood. It was a small town, man. I'm telling you. So it wasn't a lot of, friends, but it was just small. So you kind of hung out in groups of who you lived by, really. It's kind of how it was.
Were you by mountains like Derek was?
Oh, yeah, man. All over. We used to go hunting, was a big thing we did when I was a kid. That's how I got into smoking meat, actually. But yeah, just anywhere you go, left, right, south, north, there's mountains everywhere around Utah. We're completely surrounded by them. So it's a really cool place to grow up because of the outdoors. A lot of people come here to Utah because it's so beautiful. There's so many different kinds of outdoorsy. There's the deserts, and there's north, it's very green and really cool. And we spent a lot of time out there, hunting rabbits with BB guns. And, we were the kind of kids that I had a rifle when I was 9, it's just how it was back then. We just roll off and wherever and just shoot stuff, shoot windows out of old cars and shoot stop signs and killed whatever we could. That's just how it was. So,
were you from a house where the parents stayed together?
Yeah, until I moved out. They stayed together until I moved out.
What happened?
But then they got a divorce when I moved out. My dad was a dick. I love him, but he was a dick. Like, he just wasn't cool, man.
Like all through growing up, he was a dick, or just like a little bit after, or what?
Yeah, he liked to party up and for a long time. My mom wasn't. She was trying to keep everything together, and he was someone who would go out, and we have a place called Wendover that's about an hour and a half from here that has casinos, and that was a really thing he'd like to go do. I mean, there was a time where he hawked my mom's wedding ring to go out there, I think. Just crazy stuff, man. He was a degenerate. No, he was a high functioning degenerate. He was always nice to us kids. I mean, it was never a problem in the household.
Yeah.
he would just come home, and in the morning you're hungover and you don't want to talk to kids, and that's just kind of how he was. Just grumps a lot, and we'd go hunting and fishing and stuff, and it was all cool. But we grew up and there was parties at our house, and we'd be sleeping and there'd be music playing, and we wake up and there was beers and stuff. When I was a little kid, I would go out and drink the Bud Lights. The problem is that they would spit their chew into the Bud Light cans. And I didn't drink beer until I was like 25 out of necessity, because I just couldn't do it. Because to me, I didn't know the difference. I didn't know there wasn't chew in every single Bud Light,
How would you know?
Yeah, but my dad, he was just kind of like that, and he didn't want to give that lifestyle up, and he was just how he was. And he was a brick mason. He was a coal miner for a long time, if it gives you any idea of kind of how I grew up. I just one of those, play hard kind of guys, but didn't work hard. So,
were there other siblings in the house?
Yeah, I have a sister. She's younger than I am by 2 years, and my brother is younger than her by 2 years, and that was it. That was the three of us. We were pretty close. We, like I said, small town, so you kind of get close to your brothers and sisters. You kind of have to stick together. But it was really fun. It was a good time growing up in that town, and that time. That was right around the Lafferty murders. I don't know if you ever heard about that, but that happened a couple blocks from our house.
Really?
So, yeah, if you guys are into something like true crime, go look up the Lafferty murders. It's pretty damn crazy.
Do you have a thumbnail on that?
No, I don't know. I don't think so. What do you mean? Like a clip?
Like a 5-second description of like what went down?
So what happened is the Laffertys were these brothers who made a church that was a splinter of the Mormon church. And then they believed that they were coming up to, take over and cleanse whatever, we know what those people believe. I don't know. But their brothers they needed their brothers there, and their wives and other people, bishops in the Mormon church, were getting in the way. So they had a kill list of people they were going to go kill. Well, everyone chickened out but the two oldest Lafferty brothers, and they went and actually killed the wife of their brother and their infant son, 2 houses away from us.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, crazy. If you guys ever read like John Krakauer's Under the Banner of Heaven, it's a really good book, but it talks a lot about that. There's a plug. John Krakauer. Reach out to me. I'd love to say hi.
That's right. He's a big fan. Wow. All right. So what was high school like? You get into, as I was talking with Derek, that can be a weird time for some kids, but other kids don't seem to have any problem with it. So going in, being the oldest of the Monson kids, how did you find high school life to be?
I actually loved it. And in Lehigh, you were on the football team or you're on the rodeo team. And I wasn't having that. I was on the pink hair. Yeah, you were on the rodeo. But I was an outcast kid. I was the kid from the John Hughes movie, but a little bit more kind of like Derek, punk rock music, pink hair, wore just crazy stuff to school all the time, had a punk rock band, whatever, just lived life, just did whatever I wanted to do. And I failed out of school. I was actually kicked out of school because I tried to elect. Yeah.
Ooh.
So we were goofballs. We did as much as we could to kind of terrorize the school, but there was one, it didn't kick me out for this reason, but I know this is why. But during, they had, how the schools elect presidents and whatever stuff, and they kind of have like the school colors, like ours were purple and white. So it was the purple team and the white team party. I mean, we had the black party, and we tried to elect serial killers to the school. So we post flyers everywhere of like, elect
Ted Bundy,
all these people, and we keep on putting them up. And I had a friend of mine who was in the newspaper, and she actually put some things down for people to vote. And so we actually got 2% of the vote.
Wow.
The black party got 2% of the vote, and no one knew who it was. No one can prove it, but the principal had an idea. And so he was basically searching for reasons to kick me out of school, and then he just found it in that loophole and booted me, which was awesome because,
no more school.
Let's go to high school when you're 18 and full of life.
Were you a senior at that point when you get invited not to come back?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it ended up being grades. He's just like, well, you might as well just leave, and you're not going to graduate anyway. And I'm like, whatever, bye. So, but yeah, his son ended up telling me the real reason why about a year later.
What was the real reason?
Well, because I tried to elect serial killers to
Oh,
the
okay.
school.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's outrageous. Do you GED up, or are you a straight up dropout?
After school, I read a book called On the Road by Jack Kerouac. And actually, funny enough, I had 3 very close friends die in 3 different ways. And at that same time, it was a really transitional time in my life. And I didn't want to go to school. I didn't want a traditional job. I wanted to just live life, and do my thing. And I was a dishwasher at the time at a restaurant, and I read restaurant jobs. And so what I did is I basically stuck in restaurants because I had the freedom to do whatever I wanted to do. I can make good money and then travel, or I can get good money and play music, which I was into at the time. And I just wanted to live life. I just wanted to, because, when you lose friends like that at a young age, it's kind of traumatic. And I didn't want to, I just kind of, it put in things in perspective for me.
How are these friends passing away?
My good friend Sean died of a brain aneurysm one night. He went sleeping on the couch and never woke up. My friend Shannon died of a heroin overdose, and my friend Dave shot himself with a shotgun in his bathtub. Within a few years of each other. Reading that book, this is a very transcending time. So it's just like, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna, that's it's just, you kind of think that life is short, man. You don't got a lot of time to do stuff. If you look at it, we don't have a lot of time here. We don't have a lot of things to do. We can if we want to, but we choose not to. And that was kind of my creed growing up, is I just wanted to, I wanted to get as much as I could done in the time that I was given, So very, what's the movie? Ferris Bueller, status.
Are there the guy with the brain aneurysm? That's something that you don't see coming, obviously. But the other 2 guys, like the one that dies of a heroin overdose, was he into drugs, or was that something new? So, I mean, did you anticipate that? Oh, that's the guy that's going to die of a heroin overdose, kind of a thing.
Yeah, we knew it.
What about the other guy that shot himself with a gun? Was he a depressed individual, or was he also on drugs?
He was. Depression at the time wasn't serious. It wasn't taken seriously. This is the early 90s.
Still not really.
It's not. And it was worse then. And he would run around and complain, I'm going to kill myself and this and this. And he had all these problems. And he was shouting from the rooftops. And we're just like, oh, Dave's just, being a bitch. And
begging for attention.
Exactly. And no one took him seriously. And when he did it, it was, looking back now, it was a huge shock. And it shouldn't have been, because he might as well just written it on the wall everywhere he went, So looking back on that now, you kind of regret it, that you could have done something, especially because he called me that day and I didn't want to answer because frankly, didn't want to talk to him, hear him cry about whatever it was, and should have. Probably the time he needed to cry the most.
Do you think about that at all? Other than just like talking about it right now, does it haunt you in any way?
It used to. It did for a really long time. Again, it kind of translated itself into, the perspective. Like, why are we here? What's the purpose? Am I going to go to college and get a degree and work my ass off and never do anything with it? And that's how it would kind of manifest itself. I don't think about it anymore. It doesn't bother me anymore. I sometimes will go down to, because I have some people, family and stuff buried where Dave is, and I'll stop by, and stuff comes up, and it's different. Again, it translates to a perspective. I've done a lot in that time, and those tragedies have helped elevate me to where I am, and I'm really happy with where I am. So it's all stuff that building blocks in your life. It worked out, sadly.
When you're growing up, what kind of a food scene are you at home and experiencing around you that maybe starts the building blocks to where you end up here with barbecue?
Well, when I grew up, everyone was a farmer. My grandparents were farmers. They owned very large farms. My grandpa raised Piedmont cattle, grass-fed, which was weird at the time. And my other grandpa just had a normal, cows and pigs and stuff like that. So dinner there, and my mom and dad wanting me to work and feel that would make some of my summers were spent there working with them on the farms, and eating the food was amazing. You would eat the food from the garden, you'd eat the food from the cows that were there, and my mom and dad would buy it from them, and we grew up really eating that kind of stuff. My mom she cooked really well. My dad was a really good cook. They cooked poor people food like goulash, all that stuff, whatever we could put together, tacos
that you could have for a couple days.
Dude, yeah, when that friggin' stock pot came out, you're like, what's up? All right.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not eating good lunch in the next few days.
Yeah.
So we grew up in that kind of environment where we had good cooks surrounding us. It was food from, that we made, we grew. Locally sourced, I guess, at the time. I didn't know it, but to me, it was amazing. So, yeah, we were a very cook-oriented family. I wanted to cook when I was very little. I started a business when I was 5, 6, and I would make cereal by mixing cereals together. I've had a very nice thing I put on my door with a name, made cereal. Like I said, I was a latchkey kid, sort of, so I would have to cook for my younger brother and sister at a really young age, so I cook a lot. And my father and grandfather and uncles would smoke meat, and so I would try and do it too outside with random stuff. Like I would see a metal box, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to put some wood in that and a grate, and I'm going to smoke this, and I wanted to do that so bad. And that's what they would do is they would smoke. We had rabbits and chickens and turkeys, and we would sell them to the bars. We'd go around and sell them. So we'd cook them, go at night. People would buy them at these bars. And that's how we didn't make a living that way, but that was just kind of a side gig. But watching them inject and smoke and do all that stuff and was really cool. So that's the food scene I grew up on. And I was into it very early. I wanted to go to culinary school right outside of school. That's what I wanted to do my whole life. I was a student of cooking. I ended up going to culinary school when I was 40, which was, a few years back. And that was, but I've been read cookbooks when I was a kid, and it was my favorite kind of book to read, and still is.
So when you are out of high school, you don't go to college.
Nope. Well, I do. I do. I went a film study, but I drop out very quickly.
How do you get into college? Was it like a community college or something?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Community college.
So I went to community college right out of high school because I was one of the worst students ever. Not because I was adult, but I had a lack of desire to apply myself, and also I didn't care, and that's why I didn't get to go to real college when everybody else went after our senior year. So I had to learn how to be a student at community college before I ended up transferring to the college that I ended up graduating from. So you get food service jobs. You're living the life that you want to live. How does a future start to take shape for you?
It doesn't, man. It just, everything fell apart, fell into place. Life was kind of an adventure from like when I was 18 till I was 33, and everything in between was just whatever, let's drive to Vegas. Let's go do this. Let's travel here. Let's go here. Let's move to New Orleans. Let's live there for a while. And kind of bohemian looking back on it a little bit. I lived downtown Salt Lake City, and it was a fun little time to live in Salt Lake, and had a budding music scene. It was really cool. Played in mute, like I said, played bands, and lived that life for a long time. And it was fun. And then I met my wife, and I've always wanted to be a dad and settle down. That was always the goal, but I wasn't like out there searching for it, And we grew up in Utah, and it's predominantly Mormon, and you were 18 with 5 kids already. So it was different, for someone like me to not want to do that. I didn't grow up Mormon. I grew up in an extremely Mormon town. We were we were one of 10 families maybe that weren't Mormon. At least it felt that way. So, not living that life was, in Salt Lake, it was a little bit easier.
Was it like Derek said that, the other families were warning their kids about people like you?
Oh, you go to a friend's house and then you weren't allowed back. And you didn't know why. And sometimes the kid would tell you, well, my mom says that you're going to teach me about the devil. And I'm like, oh, well, all right.
I am the devil.
She's probably right, but
yeah.
I'm not going to go crazy about it, kid. No, but yeah, it was like that. Absolutely like that. Is the typical, you see in the movies, like you're walking down the street and the mom grabs her kid, moves her across the street, like don't, probably didn't help that I was wearing makeup as a boy, as a teenager. But yeah, I was a weird kid, man. I'm telling you what. It's weird looking back on.
So let's break here. We'll get the love story when we come back and learn even more about Rusty, who, by the way, is the co-host of the Pitmasters podcast. So let me find this, and I'll talk to you quickly about Big Papa Smokers, the one-stop online shop for all things barbecue, a curated selection of only the best outdoor cooking and grilling supplies. Get you on the path to better barbecue results in no time. Big Papa's known for the championship rubs and seasonings, popular flavors like Sweet Money, Cattle Prod, and Cash Cow. Proven winners on the competition circuit and in the backyard, offering 13 perfectly balanced flavors, transforming ordinary meals into extraordinary meals. Pick them up at BigPapaSmokers.com. Also, the proud owner of Granny's Barbecue Sauce. If you're looking for a new go-to sauce or you're tired of what is existing out there currently, Granny's Barbecue Sauce is one that you go on to try. Great all by itself out of the bottle. Also, easy to doctor. So if you're looking for a good base sauce and you want to tweak, or you're a tweaker, no, not that kind of tweaker, a sauce tweaker, then check out Granny's. You can do a whole bunch of stuff with it and make it your own. Aside from the premium selection of rubs and sauces, they also offer the very best pellet charcoal and wood cookers available today. If you're looking for a versatile smoker that's easy to use, check out the Mac 2-Star General Pellet Grill. Big Papa Smokers, the exclusive Mac dealer, even offering special packages. If you're not a fan of pellet smokers, take a look at the Old Hickory Ace BP, the only charcoal smoker that Big Papa trusts on his competition trailer. Not sure of what grill you need? Call them and ask questions. 877-828-0727. That's 877-828-0727. Or shop their website at BigPapaSmokers.com. That's BIGPOPPA Smokers.com. We're back with more Rusty Monson right after this. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the #1 most downloaded barbecue and grilling podcast anywhere. The Barbecue Central Show. Monthly visits from a killer hog, a cooking guy, a man named Meathead, the author of Barbecue Bible, a grill girl, a bristly barbecue journalist, and the malfeasance of the barbecue world known as the embedded correspondents. Only found right here on the Barbecue Central Show.
This portion of the show being brought to you by Pit Barrel Cooker, the most versatile cooker out there on the market today. 2 different sizes, a host of accessories to complete the experience, a third size coming sooner than later. Go to pitbarrelcooker.com and let them know the Barbecue Central Show sent you. We're back with Rusty Monson. Rusty, before we get into the love story, I mean, I am totally interested on how you run for, I mean, what is it, the better part of 15 years going to this place and that place and, as you say, living life, man. I understand the theory and mindset, but financially and physically, like, how the hell do you do that? I can't even conceptualize.
You have a hangover concoction, and you work. And I was a bartender, waiter, mostly. I started out in the kitchens, doing dishes and working the line and doing stuff like that. And then I moved out bussing and hosting. I hosted at Denny's at one point. I think I was a server for a really long time. Yeah, that too. Yeah. And then I started then I was a waiter for a real long time and a bartender. And so what's cool about it is, you work in the night, you go to work at 4, you get off at 10 midnight, sometimes later, and you got $100 in your pocket, and you go spend it and you go have a good time. And then 4 days before rent's due, you pick up shifts and you work your ass off and you pay rent. And then you start on the 1st all over again.
Wow.
And that's the life, man. That's how it was. And if you could save enough, you could go do some cool stuff, like, move to New Orleans and Chicago and and do whatever you wanted to do and live the life. That's how you do it.
Was it a pressure?
Yeah, no, I guess no. I mean, there's times where, shit got ugly and, I got kicked out of a house with 24 hours notice to move out. And there was other times where we couldn't even keep our stuff. We just had to leave. And there's times I had to couch surf and, finding some place. And, and then life gets you and you start wondering where you're going to end up. And, is this going to be my life? I'm a 45-year-old waiter, and you worry about that stuff sometimes, but, then just don't at the same time because, it's like, again, it's all about that, experiencing stuff, I don't want to die and regret anything is kind of the mantra. And
so where do you run into your wife then?
So, working in the restaurants a long time, especially working in management, I ended up becoming a restaurant manager, and I at a restaurant that I was a bartender and waiter at. So, had relations with some of the people there before I was a manager. So I had the strict rule of not dating anyone from work. That was my rule. And another thing is I was never really into younger girls, right? Always older. My friends would date someone who's like 3 years younger than me, and I was always making fun of them. Like, oh, you guys want to, come over and drink some Kool-Aid and watch Lion King? Your girlfriend will love it. And so I was always bagging on them for just dumb stuff. So I'm down in St. George, Utah, managing a Red Robin. And I hired this host. Her name's Kimmy. And we kind of, talk, whatever. I play poker. I used to think I was going to become this poker pro, right? So I was teaching how to play cards. And so we got this relationship going through cards. And we come over to my house. I teach her how to play, and we talk into the night. You know how that goes. And so one day, it's Halloween, and 2009, and she's dressed in a banana suit. And I don't know what I was dressed as. I was like I don't know. I don't dress up for Halloween, so it was probably something totally random. So she's totally decked out as a banana, and we're at work, and I say something smart ass to her, and she looks at me, and that look, man, it was just like they say in the books, just like lightning. And I knew that second that I was going to marry that chick.
Wow.
And so my birthday's coming up, so I asked her to come up to Utah with me and hang out, and she's like, okay, cool. So we go up there. And we come back, and she sleeps over in my apartment, and she never leaves my house. That's it.
Wow, so that's like the Robin Lindar story, but in Utah.
Exactly.
Holy.
So,
wow.
Yeah, so I think Robin was like, they dated for like 3 days and we moved in. But for me, it was literally that day. We decided we were going to be a couple, and then we had to keep it secret. I was going to tell, the corporate, this is what's happening. Play it right. But she moved into my house, and that was it, man. And I told her day 3, I'm like, we're getting married, so that's how it's going to go.
Do you quickly get married at that point? Or, were you just saying we're going to get married and there's no definitive timetable on accomplishment?
I should say this. I forgot to say, because I set this up. I was 33 and she was 21. And she was my subordinate. So I broke both rules. I shit where I ate.
Yeah.
And I dated a young 12
years, you're junior.
Hell yeah.
Wow.
Right. I had never been interested in a girl even at all. Cause I wasn't on the same level as them. Not to say I was better or anything. I just was over here and they were over there,
This is interesting because, when we talk about you behind your back with the other embedded correspondents, the one thing that comes up all the time is, we're roughly the same age. I think you're younger than me by 3 years. But, so we're roughly the same age. But the refrain that I hear is, Rusty's an old soul. Rusty's an old soul. So if you're somebody that is staunch against dating younger women, and now you're going to marry somebody that you were 12 when she was born, to make it sound even weirder. What is it about her? Is she then an old soul as well? Or, what about that personality allows you to diverge into that realm?
Exactly that. Like she, her mom was really big on, well, she hasn't traveled and done enough. I'm like, dude, she knows exactly what she wants. She knows, not me, but in life. Kimmy knew, probably when she was 13 years old, I don't know, but she just she's that girl that just knows what she wants. And she knows she wants to be a mom. That's all she's ever wanted to do. She wants to have kids, be married, and that's what she wants. And she's fine with whatever. And she was just super old soul is the best way to say it. because we would have conversations, and I just loved listening to her talk. And anyone at that time, her age, I was like, ooh, okay, cool. Justin Bieber, yeah, he's great. Okay, it's time to go. And it wasn't weird until I hung out with her friends, and they would talk and they would do stuff. I was like, oh Jesus, this is weird. Or like you said, like, I'm like, did you ever do this? She's like, I wasn't born yet. I'm like, you weren't born yet. Yeah. Wow. Wow. So yeah, no, it is weird. And it's just funny because I went to Las Vegas when I turned 21. And we have a picture of me in Vegas, and we have a picture of her because she lived in Las Vegas. That's where she grew up. Of her on Christmas Eve, that same Christmas Eve. It's creepy, dude. I wish I had it. I could just show you. So it's just like me as a grown ass man and her as this little girl. Yeah. Super creepy.
Yeah, I mean, we can make it sound as weird as we want, but I mean, the fact is you weren't dating back then, so who gives a crap? Everybody's legal, everybody's in love, and that's all we like. So, all right, so you guys are on board. You're going to get married. Do you have a big wedding? Do you do like Justice of the Peace thing? Do you go to Vegas and do a drive-through? What's the deal?
Well, yeah, she wanted to wait a year, but dude, we came up here to Utah County where I live. Where I'm from. Sorry, we didn't live there at the time. And we went ring shopping, and we bought a ring, and she was just insistent that I do it then. She's like, insistent. Like, you need to ask me right now. If you ask me right now, I would say yes, but it has to be in a way that I can tell all my friends for eternity. And it has to be a cool story. I'm like, you're giving me like 2 days to do this, lady. So in the music business, I know a lot of people on the radio. So I called up a buddy of mine, said, hey, I'm going to record this thing. I'm going to play the song, and then play it at this time. So we drove up to the mountain and played this song, which is our song. And then my voice comes over the radio, and I get out of the car, and she's listening to it. I'm on my knees, and I tell her on the radio to open the door, and I have a question for her, and go up. So things went real quickly after that. And so her mom took care of everything. Mom's like this whirlwind of activity. Like, she's like the Tasmanian devil, just wah. So she got us a place in St. George, a beautiful, beautiful area in the Red Rocks. That was just, it was a great, I don't remember shit. So a lot of people are like, oh, my wedding. I'm like, you're not going to remember any of this, dude. Don't worry about it. Like, I wanted to just go down to the courthouse, sign my paper. She signs hers. We high five, a little down low, call it a day, but she wasn't having it. So we had a pretty cool wedding. It was really fun. It was beautiful. Like I said, Red Rock, Utah is the coolest place on earth. And It was the perfect setting for a wedding. And it was great, man. Super great.
Are you quick to have kids after that?
Yeah, we hung out and, did some stuff, but yeah, I've always wanted to be a dad. Like when they're kids, like, I want to be a fireman. I'm like, I want to be a dad. That's how little I was when I realized that's what I wanted to do. So we got on that pretty quickly. We had 3 kids, Kate, Stella, and Winslow, all girls. Pretty quickly. Like, they're like my family, within a year, like 2 years apart. Mm-hmm. So yeah, pretty quick.
What has parenting been like for you as somebody, as you said, had a dad that was a dick? What things did you consciously decide that you were not going to do around your kids that you were exposed to? And I guess conversations that you were having with your wife on how you wanted to team parent.
Well, I left that up to her because at the time I was working 6 days a week, 12 hours a day at restaurants at, Texas Roadhouse and running that show and doing all this stuff. So I didn't have a lot of time. That was kind of left to her to decide what she wanted to do. And I was just there to support her. For me and my dad, we have a great relationship, and we kind of always have, besides him being a complete asswipe when I was a kid. He's still an asswipe. I love him, but he's an asswipe. And I wanted to be more positive with them. I wanted them to know I loved them all the time. I wanted them to know that I'm there. We're going to have fun together. We're going to do all this stuff, but I love you always, no matter what. And I wanted to try and be a positive influence in their life and not, and try and work through the problems that we have, even the dumb, kid problems, in a positive manner. That's what I took away from my growing up. And now that I'm a full-time stay-at-home dad, I get to do that a lot. And it's interesting. You get what you ask for. It's not always what you want. I love hanging out with my kids, but I see them constantly now. It's really cool.
How does that transition happen for you then? If you're a 6-day-a-week, 80-hour restaurant guy, How do you transition into full-time dadhood?
Well, my wife is a nail technician. She does hand-painted gel nails, and what that is, long story short, nails that last like a week or two.
Oh, yeah, I know all about it. 3 daughters myself, so I get it.
So she's really popular on Instagram for her nails art, and she's phenomenal. She's absolutely amazing at it. So she has this huge following on the Instagram, and one day her friend comes to her with this makeup that lasts forever. Put it on your face, never comes off. You go swimming, well, it comes off eventually, I'm sure.
Yeah, okay.
But it's like a whole day thing. It's like a 13-hour makeup. You don't have to reapply it. And she's like, I'll try it. So she tries it and she loves it. And she starts telling her friends about it, her nail friends. And like, I want to try it. And they love it. So she's like, well, I'll sign up and maybe I'll get a couple bucks. So she signs up, posts it on her nail stuff, where she's very popular. And man, it went from 0 to 700. So she signed up and it just exploded. Like in Utah, it was like she got right there, and it was a network marketing company. So she just went, just blew up. And after a year or two of that, knowing that it was probably real, I was actually going to get offered at my own restaurant, my very own, I own it restaurant. Texas Roadhouse has a managing partner system where you can buy your own restaurant. So I was about to have that. And so it was like, do I take this? Like, I don't know. It's like, or do I just retire? What do we want to do? And so we decided, I just had, read another book, and we were in Hawaii, and I was like, let's just screw it. And went back to my teenage self. It's not about working all the time. It's not about that. It's about the experiences that you can have and the adventures that you can have. And so I said, screw it. Should I retire? Or should I stop? And she's like, yeah, let's quit. So I quit. So for the past 3.5 years, I've been a stay-at-home dad, and that's what I do. She works, I don't. So yeah, worked out pretty well. So
where does the barbecue come back for you then?
So long time ago, I was driving through Mesquite, Nevada, and there was a barbecue competition there, and I went and checked it out, and it ended up being the very first episode of Pitmasters.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was driving home going, I want to do that one day. That would be really cool to be able to, I'm going to take my dad's recipes and I'm going to go out and compete. And I'm going to show the world, my neighbors like my food. So that kind of planted a seed in my brain. But working in restaurants, it's funny because I set off on this life of living and, enjoying. And then I took the management role to kind of have something to fall back on. And it was funny because my whole life changed to where I was working all the time, no time off, just busting my butt. So I didn't have a lot of time to practice that stuff. So years go by, and when my wife actually, so I cook all the time outside. I was grilling, love it all, did it all the time, cooking. But as far as competition goes, when my wife and I was able to quit, I went to culinary school. And when I was done, she goes, what do you want to do? I go, I want to do barbecue competitively. So cool, let's do it. So that's what I did. Booked my next plane and took a class from Brad Leiniger and Tim Shear, and came back and worked with those recipes a lot, and took some more classes and worked with those and developed our profile and hit the road, and and got a couple people that wanted to help me out, and just kind of rock and rolled. But that was the competition side. That all happened very quickly. But I was always interested in smoking, but grilling was my thing. And I was a gas guy, but Weber and a gas. I watched Bobby Flay, and he always had the gas and he had the Weber. So I went about the gas and the Weber, and that's what I used to cook on. So I always had my hand in it my whole life. There's never a time where I didn't. But the competition world, we just did it, and here we are. We actually did pretty well for ourselves. So
yeah, seeing success on the competition side for barbecue. And then, of course, we've talked at length on the steak competitions as well. So where do you see this stage of life pursuing to? What's the next step?
So it's coming all back. Just bought myself a food trailer, got it all wrapped up. I'm getting back into the restaurant business, but I'm going to own it myself. I've worked in the restaurant business in every aspect of it for, since I was 15 until about 3 years ago. So do the math. It's just what I know. I know how to run restaurants. I know them upside and inside and out. And staying home, I realized that it's fun and it's cool, but I need to be doing something. There's got to be something I'm doing constantly. And my wife, she ended up after 3 years agreeing. So she's really on board for me kind of getting the hell out of the house for a little while. But so I'm going to start a food truck. I'm going to keep competing. I'm going to try and get into barbecue. I'm just going to try and make barbecue my life, however that is, doing the podcast, doing this show, competing, doing food, wherever I can get my hands in is kind of where I'm going to go and try and just work my way into making this barbecue thing my life. And in case for some reason my wife doesn't, her company, like the owner gets caught with a dead hooker, I'll have something, what I'm saying? I have something to fall back on, and I want it to be barbecue. So I'm going to try my best to do that in every aspect that I can.
Do you have any of your 3 daughters that show any interest in this at all or share a passion?
The 2 oldest always want to help me cook all the time. They're constantly helping me do something. So I cook at home 3 meals a day for everyone. So that's kind of my deal. And they help me out every step of the way. They help me. My oldest is now helping me on the grill a little bit. She likes to go throw the meat on. She likes to carry the pan, but that's as far as she goes. She's 6. She's kind of afraid of the fire right now, but she loves to help cook inside, and she loves to do anything to help Dad. So that's nice. That's how I was. So that's hopefully how she'll be, because that would be great. As long as there's New Orleans Saints fans or they're into cooking, I've succeeded. That's how I look at parenting. So,
how old are the other 2?
5, 4, and 3. So yeah, 6.
You have 6, 4, and 3.
Yeah, dude. And guess what?
My Lord! Wow.
When I stayed at home, I had an infant, a freaking 2-year-old, and a 4-year-old.
Yeah,
that's what I. Yeah. Careful what you ask for, people.
I mean, I've done that, but I was not 40 when I was doing that. I was, when I was in forced retirement. I forget exactly, what year that was, but the girls were, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, 4 and something, and then an infant. So, I mean, I remember those days, but for some reason, I remember thinking, well, I mean, I think now, well, there's no way I could have done that at any other point in my life than when I was that young, because I didn't care if I didn't sleep, and we were in a spot where my wife was literally able to go to work full time as a physical therapist the day when I lost my job. The next day she just picked up and went to work full time for years after that. So it wasn't a choice of mine like it was for you to be a full-time dad, but it just happened that after I was out for 6 or 8 months that we had a conversation and said, well, it doesn't seem to be a great market right now. We're not going to put the kids in daycare if I found a job, if it wasn't going to be worthwhile financially, because then you're just pissing away money on childcare, which is very expensive. So do something that a lot of dads don't get to do. Stay home and you be the mom this time. And like, those are days that I'll just never, ever look back and regret whatsoever. I mean, I'm a worker and I like to work, and I hated the fact that the job didn't want me to work there anymore, and worse, didn't give me any heads up on that shit. But the relationship that I was able to build with the girls and teach them things that perhaps my wife wouldn't have done, or just because I was the guy that was there, is really rewarding to me. And getting back into the workforce after the fact, I mean, certainly is great and all that, whatever. But that time is something that I'll always remember fondly, and I think it helped draw a closer bond with my daughters because I was there. And a lot of dads at that age are not. They're out there on the hustle, and that's what you got to do to keep food on the table and pay the bills. So and I was right there with you at that age, and hold on to every second of it, because quickly they're in college and ready to go to college and starting high school all at the same time. So what can I tell you? Yeah, fun stuff.
Yeah, and it's hard to see that in the interim, but it's totally cool. Like even just seeing myself getting out, I'm just gonna miss that. We're up there gonna have movie night, stuff like that. It's not gonna happen because it's gonna be different.
Rusty Monson can be found on his show, co-hosting the Pitmasters podcast, which releases new episodes each week. He's also out there competing on the barbecue competition scene. He's competing on the steak cooking scene. He's got the food trailer that is it out and ready yet? Like, I've seen the trailer, but like, when are you launching?
I got to take my tests and do the stuff, but COVID won't let me go take my proctor test, so I have to do that.
Right,
once that's done, filing for licenses, and we're rocking and rolling.
All right, we're on hold for that, but hopefully sooner than later. And, of course, you can find him here on the fourth Tuesday of every month with the other malfeasance of the barbecue community during the Embedded Correspondence segment. Rusty, really appreciate you joining the team this year. You've brought a fresh perspective and a view that has really added to the dais of experts that I've assembled here over the years. So I couldn't be more proud to have you and call you part of the team, and appreciate what you do each and every month.
Well, we appreciate you, man. It's been a blast. It's been really, really cool. Been a huge fan of the show, and now that I'm on it, it's kind of like joining the band you like,
Awesome. Well, glad we could put it together. And Rusty, thanks again, friend.
Hey, thank you, man.
You got it. There he is, Rusty Monson, right there, giving us his origin story. And Doug Scheiding is locked and loaded. Now I just got to figure out the hell I'm going to do here. Let me get this piece of business out of the way. We'll probably start fresh with Doug. It's going to be damn near a 3-hour show tonight, so pack a lunch. Let me talk to you quickly about the Barbecue Guru. Always believing outdoor cooking should be easy and fun, because it can be, especially with the Monolith. Monolith, the world's first temperature-controlled smoker with a built-in power draft fan, meaning smarter control and greater freedom with automatic temperature control. Easily choose your cooking time and temperature and let the Monolith do the work of a sous chef or a barbecue pitmaster. With minimal effort, you now have oven-like precision at the grill. You can serve the tastiest, juiciest of meals each and every time. Go to the website, bbqguru.com. That's bbqguru.com. Or give them a call, 800-288-GURU. That's 800-288-GURU. The Barbecue Guru continues to be a breakthrough in barbecue technology. We wrap this origin story of Rusty Monson up now, and we will be back to start Doug Scheiding's from Row Cooker right after this. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the #1 most downloaded barbecue and grilling podcast anywhere. The Barbecue Central Show. Howard Stern, Jim Rome, Dan Patrick, and Greg Rempe. The Mountain Rushmore of talk show entertainment. Now, let's get back to the Barbecue Central Show.
All right, welcome back. We're getting ready to get the origin story of Doug Scheiding here in just a second. This portion of the show being brought to you by Smithfield Fresh Pork. Go to smithfield.com. Get tips and tricks from Chris Lilly, Ernest Cervantes, Darren Worth, and Childs Cridland. Some of the best pork money can buy, so head on over to smithfield.com and check out everything that they have going on. Without further ado, you know him, you love him. He is the longest-running embedded correspondent that I have here on the show, and he is none other than the pitmaster of Rogue Cookers, Doug Scheiding. Hey, Doug. Doug. Hello. Oh. Doug's punched out. Doug will be coming back in, no doubt. It's like the third guest. It always goes bad. Maybe I got to ditch this line.
I'm here.
All right, there you are.
You see me? I was here. I was like, I could hear you talking.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe this line I got to get rid of. Who knows?
It goes back to like the first time I was on, sort of thing.
right.
You know, it's
We're
out of the
all
memory
coming full
perspective.
circle. How about that? All right, Doug Scheiding joining me here on the show. So we're going to get Doug's origin story here, as I had mentioned. This will be a bonus hour or so. So we're recording, so if you can, you got to go to bed or whatever the case is, go ahead and do what you got to do. You can get this probably on Friday or Saturday as a special release. But obviously I wanted to knock out 2 of the 3 embedded correspondents. I don't actually have any goddamn idea, Doug, how we would have pulled off 3 embedded correspondents during this evening tonight. So I hate the fact that John had to miss tonight because of the circumstances, but this will certainly...
That's what I own you. I was like...
Yeah, I don't know. Here we go, though. Doug Scheiding, where and when were you born?
Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah. I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Goodness. Okay.
Yes, all right.
All right. I was born... I feel like, you know, I'm on Barbara Walters and you're going to make me cry.
I hope
I'm
so.
Mariano Rivera and I'm the Sandman, you know, having to bring in the closer for the end of the night. But I was born in Lubbock, Texas. So I am a Texan. As we've discussed, I think in the past, you know, I've moved many times when I was young. So we were there for a few months and then we moved to San Antonio, but anyway, we moved quite a bit when I was young.
All right. So what was family life like for you as you were growing up prior to getting into high school?
Well, the Vietnam War that was in there. So Dad had volunteered. He was an instructor pilot in the Air Force, and he had volunteered, I think, in 66, 67. Right, you know, I was born in 66, so he volunteered to go over there right as I was born, and they didn't. He was an instructor pilot, so they kept him in his position until about 69, when he did go over to Vietnam, and so he did 2 tours over in Vietnam, 69 and 70. So I remember, you know, getting the little cassette tapes back because he would do the little cassette tapes and we would play it and I would be able to hear his voice and those sorts of things. And I remember going to Hawaii when he was on TDY from Vietnam to, you know, meet with us for a week and stuff. So I remember some of those things, and gosh, I would have been 4 years old or so. And but you know, when we came, you know, when he came back in 70 or so, we went to Denver. But you know, prior to that, we had been to Lubbock, San Antonio, Del Rio, Clovis, Fort Walton Beach, and back to Del Rio, and then to Denver. So we moved all those places when, by the time I was like 5 or 6, and 6 years old. And so when he came back from...
Hey, Doug, let me interrupt you here just for a second, because I don't want to menace. I don't want to...
Other family members that he changed quite a bit, and he used to be kind of a...
Yeah, we're getting a lot of stutter and Darth Vader things going on here.
Oh.
Yeah, can we reconnect potentially?
Sure.
All right.
Sure.
I don't want to miss any of this. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Don't want to miss this. That's right, guy. Get the caffeine. Out tomorrow. Yeah. All right.
Is
see
it
how
better
this
now?
goes. Well, you know, I mean, it's always you got to run it out and see. So you started actually chopping up quite a bit when you had mentioned that you might have moved 758 times by the time you were 6 years old. So
it kind of felt like that, yeah. So
wow.
But you know, so when Dad came back from Vietnam, I'm told that he was kind of a changed person. So because he used to be a fun-loving type person, and when he came back from Vietnam, he you know, felt it was during the time that, you know, it was kind of a hippie time, and he felt ashamed of what he had done and didn't feel like America, you know, serving for his country and stuff, and didn't feel like America really supported him when he came back. And so he was very reserved and really, really didn't interact too much and didn't have much interaction. And so that kind of affected our relationship for a long time. And so I had a closer relationship with my mother from, basically through most of growing up and not my father.
Does he, I mean, this is a completely different time, but I ask because I wonder if it's available at that point. Was he somebody that, realized that he wasn't getting support from people around him, from general public? I mean, it's sad that he was ashamed of, what he was doing. I mean, was he ashamed because people were making him feel like that? Or did he just not agree with things that were going down that he was under command to do?
A little of both. I mean, when he walked off the tarmac, off the plane on the tarmac, someone, a hippie looking guy, walked in front of him and looked at him and then spit at him, as he's, coming back to America,
Yeah.
And so, and when we went to Denver was very, loose, and kind of free. And, being military, you're part of the solution or part of the problem. And, for example, my first and second grades that I went to in Denver, they weren't called grades. They were called pods. And so, and there were no wrong answers to the questions and stuff. So like my dad still, they would have parent-teacher conferences and stuff. And so he'd ask the teacher, because they'd want us to go to the gully and count the number of trees on one side. He'd say, well, how many trees are there? Well, that's not it's about the process of counting the trees. And, one time he came to the school for another parent teacher conference and said, there was a kid urinating on the outside of the building. And, we played in sandboxes and we did, all kinds of, it really wasn't a school. It was more like a giant play yard, my first.
A Montessori.
Yeah, kind of, but, a pod, who's ever heard of a pod? And so, I made clay stuff. I played in the sandbox. I learned math by little sticks of that were different lengths. And that's how we learned math, so it was very, outward thinking, forward thinking, very loose and wild and free. My first couple of years.
Does your dad ever look to go, seek any kind of self-help, realizing that he's not getting supported from general public and he's having his own demons from, doing whatever he had to do over there under command?
Yeah, no, he basically just buried himself into work. So he was in the Air Force. And so at that, he went there and got his master's. And then we, from Denver, we moved to San Antonio. And so here he became an engineer, a structural engineer on the C5. And if anyone's interested, my dad has actually written a book about this because he didn't come back from Vietnam until 2009. And he wrote a book called The Long Return. Mm-hmm. And so actually, since he's written that book, and I've actually got him into some few clubs and stuff, he's actually much more gregarious now. So he's a totally different person. But he just buried himself into work, and so and so he was off doing work. My mom was actually a high school teacher, and so like Rusty said, from a latchkey stuff, I was a little bit of that. And, but my brother I actually had a brother, and he was born 7.5 years after me. And because of the Vietnam War, my mom didn't want, she didn't want to have a kid while dad was gone to Vietnam and have two kids. She just wanted to have one. So that's why there's so many years apart from us. But, in San Antonio, I just kind of did things with kids and stuff like that, and kept, tried to keep myself occupied because my parents were always working.
Was there another sibling aside from your younger brother then, or just you two?
No, just the two of us.
All right. So getting into high school, how do you remember that time? Are you into sports? Are you a good student? What's it like?
Well, we moved from San Antonio. We moved to Montgomery, Alabama, and I never really I didn't really care too much about school, et cetera. But we moved to Montgomery, and my parents, specifically my mom, she wanted me to get into private school. So I had to take an IQ test. So I took an IQ test, and magically, I have no idea, I got into private school, and they wouldn't tell me what I scored or anything like that. And so I got into private school, and I'm like, I'm going to show these little private school kids that I can do something. And so I actually started, I was playing baseball there. I think we spent about 18 months or 24 months there. So I started playing baseball. My best friend, Charlie, his dad was the coach. And so played baseball on his team and stuff. And so then I kind of started feeling competitive, and that's where I got some of my competitive juices. I also started playing tennis there. And they kept score in terms of the grades and how you did and that sort of stuff. And so I started being competitive, and so I wanted to do better than those rich kids that were there. And so that actually kind of formed me and affected me from that standpoint. So and we spent 2 years there. My parents actually moved before the school year was over, and I stayed with my buddy Charlie, and I was on the state team from Montgomery, and we lost in the finals of the state championship, to go to the World Series and stuff. But I was a pitcher and played third base and also outfield, and had a good time. I really liked it.
Did you have any aspirations or was there any collegiate talk at that point? I mean, that's a pretty high level team you're on.
Yeah, there was some talk, but I moved, and my parents moved back to Clovis, New Mexico. I found it interesting. Derek mentioned Clovis. I'm like, Clovis, yes, wow. Yeah. So that was our second time back to Clovis. So so my parents moved, and one of the things that it's weird, the small things that kind of affect you as a kid, right? But they moved, and I had a coin collection. And my dad cashed in my coin collection as regular coins when they purchased the house, because I wasn't there and stuff. So then I was like, okay, I'm not collecting anything the rest of my life. I'm not doing anything. And so, I got back. I'm like, what do you mean you cashed in my coin collection and stuff? And so that actually affected my relationship with my dad for a few years from that. But when I moved to Clovis, I decided to give up baseball and just go tennis full time. And so that, and we Clovis is a small town, 35,000. That was 8th, 9th grade, I was an outsider because I was military, and, moving into a town, there was, sections, you're military. And then there were like, the cool kids that were there, part of the town and sort of thing. So, but because I played tennis, I actually got in with some of the more popular kids, and that were, well known and so actually, started kind of moving up, if you will, and getting in with the cool crowd.
What year are you in high school?
I was in high school, let's say from 80 to 84 or 81 to 84. Okay. So, and, back in the Hair Nation days, that's why, I had a Hair Nation, a little bit of a mullet, and so I was in an air band in high school as well. So
many people.
Yeah.
So I would assume you're a fairly decent student as well.
Yeah. When I went to that private school, I decided that I was going to be a good student. And that actually won me favor with my parents. And so that was kind of like the approval. The bar was always set up this high for me, and, always trying to get approval from them, and being the firstborn, et cetera. So actually in high school, I was the valedictorian. Oh, wow. But and I had the highest, I had above a 4 GPA because I took AP classes and stuff like that. But, a little bit of politics. Even though I was a tennis player and on student council and stuff like that, there were 3 of us that had above a 4.0, but I had the highest. They didn't have me speak as valedictorian or anything like that. They had the student body president speak, and so none of the 3 of us spoke. But it was okay. He was my doubles tennis partner, And I actually wound up playing, football at Baylor and stuff like that. So he was a good friend, good athlete, and stuff like that. But high school was a lot of fun. Played tennis. Never got to go to prom because I was always playing state in tennis. Wound up my senior year, I was fourth in the state.
Wow.
in tennis, and at that time I was thinking about going to college and playing D1 type tennis and stuff. But had a full ride at New Mexico State.
Okay, I was going to say, were you getting offers?
Yeah. Yeah, I had a full ride at New Mexico State. But my goal in high school was, basically coming out of high school was to be a day's drive away from my parents. I wanted to be 8 hours away. I didn't want them popping in on me. And so I turned down New Mexico State. I turned down Texas Tech. They offered me a small scholarship, and I was Texas A&M. I remember watching them on football, on TV and stuff. And I'm like, I want to go to A&M. Plus, I know you've asked, this is probably one of your questions and stuff, but my dad being an Air Force pilot, he flew F-111s in Clovis. I love planes. I've always loved planes. I always loved, flying Braniff, back when that was big.
Yeah, right.
And he was a aerospace engineer, and so I took all the the Myers-Briggs test? Is it the Myers-Briggs or whatever those tests are that says, kind of what your personality is and, how it matches with other people in different industries and stuff like that. Engineering was mechanical engineering and other types of engineering were, probably 5 or 6 of the top 10 that I matched with. Wow. And so I debated going mechanical engineering or aerospace. And I made up my mind I was going aerospace, and A&M had one of the top 10 aerospace schools in the country as well. So I said, okay, I'm going to A&M. Wow. And so I knew 2 people at A&M. One was my cousin, and the other one was another guy from Clovis High School, which I didn't like. So it was just going to be a new beginning for me. Yep. And so I took it that way.
We've cursorily covered this, many moons ago, but as you're moving around, like, how does that affect you? I mean, you're a little kid, you're moving around, you're middle school, you're moving around, and high school, you're moving around. I mean, usually when transfers happen in high school, I mean, that's a real big deal for a lot of parents where, if they're and I was one of those kids that moved. It was the middle of 6th grade, and I'm sure there was a lot of talk between my parent. I'm not privy to any of that talk, but I'm sure there was a lot.
That was
of talk.
your first and only move. That was your first.
I mean, we had moved
move
when I was younger, and it was like nothing that I really remember. Like, I recall living like Saratoga. I mean, I knew I have like some memories of horse heads and one weird memory of getting locked out of an apartment in Henrietta Highlands. But I mean, way young. Saratoga. So the big move for me was from New York to Cleveland. And, here I've stayed ever since, and my parents have since moved down to Florida back in 97. But, it was one move. It was 6th grade, and I fear that I remember my dad recounting a story saying, in the middle of high school, he had an offer to transfer to Florida at some point. And, like, it was never even mentioned. They just, passed on it. They weren't going to pull us out of high school because of how it could affect us and or what it would have effect wise on us. And so I wonder, as somebody who just moved constantly, I mean, more than anybody that I ever know, like, how does that realistically affect you, like, every time? And then more importantly, like, how is that building a personality of Doug Scheiding as a youth?
Yeah. So we moved 12 times between, when I was born, and then, when I graduated from college. So yeah, as I think I've mentioned before, I was more of an introvert and, occupied myself with, back then the handheld video games and, I'd make up stuff, games to play in my room and stuff. But I had trouble having long-term relationships. And so I would develop maybe 1, maybe 2 relationships at each place. and not really care about making friends with other people. And that carried over for a long period in my time, and still does to a certain extent, So sometimes when I go to parties, I kind of revert back to my old ways, and I'm like, who am I going to know here, and why do I want to talk to these people? Because I'm never going to see them again. And so that's kind of my attitude going in, or at least it used to be. Yeah. But now, heck, I can talk barbecue with anybody. A lot of people want to talk barbecue. So, but when I got out of high school, I was more of an introvert. When I took the test, I was on the introvert side as compared to extrovert. So I'm probably gone the other way.
Were you always thinking that, so if you made those two relationships, were you always just waiting to hear that this week is the week that we're going to learn that we're going to be moving again?
Yes. Yeah. And in fact, I went through junior high and high school kind of fearing that as well, because my dad was given the choice when we moved from Montgomery to go to England, because it had been a while since he had been overseas. I guess you have to go overseas so often and stuff. And so, or Clovis, New Mexico. Clovis was considered remote duty. Yep. It's in the middle of stinking nowhere. And, it's right over the Texas border, kind of a triangle with Lubbock and Amarillo, basically. So Clovis was 9 miles over. In the end, that was actually, I consider Clovis my home. I went to high school there, and several times we wound up staying there for a little over 6 years. I guess my parents were there for 8. But it was because my dad kept going up, and, he was a pilot, then he was a instructor pilot, then he was a squadron command. He kept moving up the chain there, so they allowed him to stay there. And so it was actually very beneficial for me, because I did develop a lot of relationship in high school. Mm-hmm. And that's anyway. So yeah, I developed a lot of relationships with guy friends, but girls, I never, and we'll get into this with my wife, but I never had a relationship longer than 3 months, even in high school and in the first few years of college.
So you get into A&M, I assume you're choosing the aerospace engineering major, which is like an incredibly lofty and academic major, no doubt about it. So how does college unfold for you?
I actually, my mom encouraged me. I had tested out of a few classes. My mom encouraged me. She goes, go ahead and take them and get the easy A. I'm like, okay. So, I'm like, okay, I'll do that. Yeah. Even though I had clept out of them and stuff. And so, my first year, I had goals. I had big goals. I wanted to learn how to play quarters, and make, the game quarters.
The drinking game?
Yes.
Yes.
This is my big goal.
Do I know?
Yeah.
I think I was a master at one point. Oh, my Lord.
Okay. Yeah. I could shoot a quarter 5 different ways.
Wow.
And, I could make it. I mean, my best way was off my nose, right? You saw the jerks that did it off their nose. I could make it into like a beer can, into the opening so many times. And so then people would, make the rule, depending on the table. And then they'd make the rule, well, you can't shoot off your nose. Well, so then I could shoot it out my mouth. I could shoot it off, like a gun. I could shoot it from the front, and then I could bounce it from the side. And so we would practice quarters all the time.
Wow.
And so that I drank a few Cokes that year.
How does that reflect in your grades?
That is funny. I made 2 B's that semester. One was in English, which I thought, my mom was an English teacher, when I was growing up. So I thought I was a literary genius. I found out when I went to college, I wasn't quite so good in English as I thought I was.
Yeah.
And my first grade in English was a D. And I went and talked to that professor every time there was a paper and talked to him about what I did wrong in the paper. So I wound up with a B in English and a B in, I think it was physics. And I'm not sure they gave any A's in that physics class. And in fact, I think I had a 35 average going into the final, and I pulled, and I didn't even study for it. And I pulled because I could guess and get a 35, and I didn't even study for it except for the last 2 days before the final, and I got a 40, and that raised my grade to a B.
Wow.
You know, they curved it that much, and you know, the professor was never there and stuff, and so, but yeah, so I made those 2 Bs, and then the next year I pledged a fraternity. And the busier I got, the better I did. I made a 4.0 the next year, and my roommate made a 0.6, I think it was. We were out till 2 a.m, having lineups and all that stuff. Not that that ever happened, but you know, we had that kind of stuff, and the busier I was, the better I did. So then that's when I really started applying my freshman year. I just kind of jacked around, and you know, I gained my 16 pounds my freshman year, since I wasn't playing tennis, because I actually was promised a spot on the A&M tennis team, and that's when I learned about the world of politics. You know, I went through a 64-man draw. I wasn't even supposed to, have to go through a draw. So we went through it. I lost to a junior college transfer, 6'4" in the finals. And he had played 2 years in junior college. And so he got the right to play a guy on the top, on the team. He played the number 5 guy, almost beat him.
Wow.
And I'm like, geez, I can play on the team. And the coach Kent goes, y'all did good. He goes, but I have 8 South African players, and I'm only supposed to have 6 on scholarship this year. So come out next year. You're really good. We'll have you out next year. And I'm like, see ya. And so I played intramurals. I think I lost in the semis and intramurals and won the doubles and intramurals and stuff. And then I just gave up tennis. So I was like, forget it. So it worked out in the end, because I had a lot more time to practice quarters and stuff my freshman year.
Important.
And then starting my sophomore year, that's when the education kind of kicked in, where it was kind of much harder. But I did better. I got a 4.0, and then so that was my first one. And then I was like, okay. Then I became driven. I was going to be the best in my class.
How does college finish up then?
I finished number 1 in my class.
Wow.
I made 3 Bs. I made 1 other B, and that was on a team project, and some douchebag didn't do his part, and his part didn't work. Yeah, right. To use your terms, I'm quoting. Yes. I'm using air quotes, douchebag. So anyway, I finished with a 3.94 or something like that.
Wow.
And number 1 in my class, and I actually was selected as the top aerospace student in the nation that year.
Really?
Yeah, I was.
Holy
I was.
moly! In the nation?
Yeah.
Wow.
In the nation.
So
by the AIAA.
Being the number 1 coming out, what does that afford you? Do you have job offers coming out? Were you interning during your college years? So you had already made inroads. I mean, this is pretty high level stuff.
Yeah, because we moved in the summers, I really didn't get to intern except I was 4.5-year plan. So my last half semester, I set it up that I was taking 12 hours, and I call it my victory lap, because I had psychology, sociology, easy stuff, and so I traveled the nation that semester and just interviewed, and because I always had my mindset that I was going to work for General Dynamics. I love the F-16. That's one of my favorite planes. And even though it's a single engine plane, I just love that plane. And so I was like, oh, okay. So I went to Boeing. I went to Lockheed Martin. I went to E3. I went to NASA, and this was a little scandalous. There was a 2-day interview set up, with, various departments down there and stuff. And so I left after the first 3 hours. And they said, what do you mean you're leaving? And I said, I'm leaving. I'm having someone come pick me up, because the people had not even read my resume when I went into the interview. And I'm like, okay, they're just a little Congress mandates that you have to have 50 people for this job, and they just want people in there, and then you're a little checkbox. And I'm like, that's not what I'm after. And so it was during this interview process that I really kind of understood I wasn't going to fit in a large organization. And, Boeing, they have the totem pole, and you weren't necessarily totally promoted based on the job you did and everything. I'm like, okay, so you're out. And General Dynamics, I interviewed for black, they call them the security, they call them black programs. Yep. Where you couldn't really, go inside. And so I, interviewed in the lobby of General Dynamics, and I'm like, they offered me cool things that they were going to tell me to do, but they really couldn't tell me what I was going to do. So I said, okay, you're out. And so I basically went around the country interviewing at different places and stuff. And so I narrowed it down to 3, and one was the Exxon management program, but it was in New Orleans, and I wasn't real wild about living in New Orleans. And then the next one was E3, which did some things kind of related to satellites. And see, I love planes, but I hate satellites. I mean, I have no desire to go to the moon and get in a satellite and, no oxygen, forget that. So, and then the last one, the only internship I did was the summer before my victory lap or victory semester. And I worked for a little small company, and in aerospace, we did something called, it's called finite element analysis. Basically, it's computer simulation. So, you take a structure and you divide it up into real small mathematically predictable elements. And then you put them all together and then subject them to whatever stress that they're going to go over, like when they're flying. So on the wings, the stress of the air, the air going over the wings and how that pushes up and those sorts of things. And you can do that on the computer. So that's what I liked when I was in college, and so I said, that's what I'm going to do when I get out. And so when I worked for this company here in San Antonio, he said, come and see me the last. And I'm like, okay, I'll come and see you. And so I told him, hey, I think I'm going to go with Exxon because they were offering the most money, and I was going to do a management program where you do 6, 6, 6, and 6. 6 months here and in different programs, and so it was a management track to go up within Exxon, and he said, okay. He goes, what are they offering you? And I said, I don't know, I think about 35,000 or so. He goes, okay, I'll do that plus five. So that was 40,000 back in the 88 or so, and I'm like, oh, okay. And so he goes, and you'll be able to do your own, your computer simulation. I've got a project for you to do right away, and you'll be your own boss. And so it was him, someone else, and his wife did like the bookkeeping and stuff. So I started there and wound up staying there for 10 years, and grew it from 3 people to 19 people. And we did software sales. We did software consulting. I was in charge of consulting. And then I was also in charge of the sales. So I would hire salespeople, they'd leave, and then I'd go and sell some. And then I'd go back to doing consulting, because, I got a little tired of being in front of the computer. Back then the fax was really cool. That was really neat. I'd start a job, the 386, 486 was big. So I'd start a job like at 10 at night. We'd have to live close to work. So I'd go back in at 2 or 3 just to see if it would be working, and that I didn't have some programming error and stuff. And so we lived real close and stuff. But I got a little tired of that. And so I did more of the sales and stuff. And so, but anyway, long story. But I interviewed with him last. He matched it plus 5,000. I got to do whatever the heck I wanted to, which kind of goes, with what I like to do now, is whatever the hell I want to. And I took that. And so it was formative from the standpoint of, I've always worked for small companies, and I just like to, to be in charge of my own self and not have, multi layers of management on top of me.
So you're out of college. You have a job that you're there for 10 years.
Yep.
Where does a Mrs. Doug Scheiding make an appearance? And tell us how that love story happened.
Miss Jen. I always envisioned, and maybe this is because my mom had envisioned this for me, is marrying a sweet, sorority type girl, and prim and proper, etc. So, but that's not who my wife is, and my wife is awesome. She is a tomboy, and I was walking across campus, and she walks by. An A&M is a pretty conservative campus. Aggies and stuff, the Corps of Cadets, and, very conservative. She walks by and says, "Hey, Doug." And I'm walking with my best friend who I pledged the fraternity with, David Sperlin. I'll see him this weekend. I looked and I literally kicked him in the ass. I said, "Who the hell was that?" And she's walking barefooted, right? I'm like, "Who is that?" It's pretty noticeable. Well, come to find out, she had seen me at a fraternity party early in the semester, our junior year. And she had gone with a guy that was trying to pledge our fraternity. And I had a date for that one, for that particular event. But I had asked her the night before, after I'd had a few Cokes, and it was kind of dark and stuff. And so I went and picked her up, and she had all this makeup on. I'm like, okay, this isn't going to work out. We just both kind of knew this isn't going to, it's like, so anyway, so it's like someone to hit me in the candelabra and I didn't know who it was that I was going out with. And so anyway, so I was basically by myself. Well, they were playing the rules wrong on the roulette table. So I was winning money at the roulette table every time. And I was totally sober and I was cheering and doing all this. My wife saw my name tag, Doug, and she recognized me when she saw me like a couple of days later. and so then I saw her like, let's say maybe a week or two later, and at the post office. And so I walked her to class, and I was late to my engineering class, which I'm never late to my engineering class. And so then I saw her. I was trying to get away from this girl, and so she was actually laying out in a two-piece bikini, and she called my name, and I went over and started talking to her. I asked her, I said, "Okay, let's go to, will you go with me to a football game?" If a girl says yes to a football game at A&M,
yes,
you're in. Okay. You're in. Because here's why. Because if you really like her, you'll ask her to Friday the midnight yell. At A&M we have a midnight yell practice for home games before the football game on Saturday midnight. You have a midnight yell.
It's like a pep rally.
Yes, it's like a pep rally, but it's held in the football stadium, and like 30,000 people go to it. So I didn't ask her to go to that. I just asked her to go to the football game. But it doesn't matter, because if she goes to the football game, you're in, because you get to score, you get to kiss every time the football team scores. See, when A&M sucked, wow. you would kiss on every first down. So
the rules are changing so you can make out.
Oh, absolutely. Nice. So the game we went to, and it was very romantic. It was me and 7 other guys, because I was pledge trainer, and Jennifer. Oh. But she was like, it was actually great, because she knew football. She was like predicting some of the plays. I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool. And it wound up being the game of the decade for the Southwest Conference in the 80s. And it was against Baylor. We won 35-32. So needless to say, we got a few smooches in on that first date. So it was actually 34 years ago. October 18th, we just celebrated our anniversary last week.
Nice, look at you.
Of our first date. Yes. So that was our romantic first date. But she didn't call me back for like 2 weeks. She wasn't calling me back. I'd call and leave a message.
Okay.
What's going on? Oh, yeah.
I thought you meant like she wasn't calling you back and you were just like ghosting.
Oh, no.
You were following up. You were doing your due diligence.
I followed up a couple of times, and didn't want to act too interested. And then she wasn't returning, wasn't really calling me back that much, at all. And so I had a pledge this is kind of the way my mind thinks. It's kind of weird sometimes. So I had a pledge that was getting my signature. So we were driving around, and so we went and found a wood pile because at that time she had a squirrel. My future wife had a pet squirrel
in her room.
And so yes.
Weird.
And so I told you she was very liberal.
Yeah.
And so, walking around, no shoes and stuff. She had this squirrel. It would be in her backpack and it would go and crawl around and stuff like that. Oh yeah. So I was like, okay. She won't call me back, right? So I said, okay. So we went and got 2 logs. Hey, this is kind of interesting, kind of a barbecue story. So got 2 sticks of wood, the big sticks with bark. I put a rope there and I put a card in there for her to give me a call. She wasn't in, because the dorms and stuff, they're all locked and stuff. This is back, when everything was real conservative. So anyways, I just started dialing people in and finally got a hold of someone. I said, hey, come down, pick this up and give this to Jennifer when she comes in. And so they came down, and then, as the story goes, when Jennifer came home, they called her and like, we've got something for you, but we're not sure what it is. It's 2 pieces of wood and a rose and a card in a paper bag. She called me the next day.
Nice.
So it worked. And so, yeah, we dated for a while, and off and on. And, I still had the detachment disorder going on. And so that was, October. And so we were dating, and I'd be hot, I'd be cold. And so finally, right before spring break, I'm headed to a test. She meets me on my way to my test, my last test before spring break. And she goes, I'm not putting up with this shit. You're off and on. And so she goes, we're done. We're not, and I'm going and having fun on my spring break. I'm like, okay. And so I was late to the test, had to be all the way in the back of the class, and, was thinking about it and stuff. But, so finished the test, was going with some buddies. South Padre was the place to go when we were in college. And so we went to South Padre. I had been to South Padre many years and stuff. And so after a couple, 2-3 days, I couldn't scam. I didn't want to scam. I was like, what the hell is she doing? Where is she? And so we stayed at this flea bag hotel, the Sands Motel. Literally, this is payphone time, right? Payphone.
Yeah.
So I was using the payphone at the Sands Motel in Brownsville, Texas, outside of South Padre. And the owners felt so sorry for me. They were actually bringing me tacos. So I knew she was staying at her friend's house in McAllen. So I started calling the Chappas in McAllen to find her. Luckily, Arturo Chapa starts with an A, and I found where she was staying in McAllen. I said, let's talk when we get back. And so we did, cried like a baby. She forgave me. And then ever since then, we've been together.
And no hot and cold after that.
Negative.
Yeah.
Negative. I got over it. So no, she finally put the screws to me, and she was just the independent woman that I needed.
Yeah.
Needed to really kind of put me in my place. So,
yeah. So, you guys are married like after you get out of college then?
Yeah. Yeah. We waited till we were both 23. We waited till I graduated in the, say December of 88. We married July 1st of 89.
All right.
Is when we married, which was her parents' 27th year anniversary, by the way. Right. So
yeah. Share date. Nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she didn't. When I asked her to get engaged, I heard Rusty's kind of story and stuff like that. Jennifer was not like that at all. I actually had to surprise her. So when I worked at that company, the semester before my victory lap, I worked a ton. I'd work 18 hours and pay me by the hour. And so I saved up enough money, and I had friends that were Jewish who had a family member that owned a place in New York, a diamond place in New York. And so I got the diamond, mounted it, and then I went up there to her parents, and then I had a limo pull up to her house, and her mom's like, you know what's happening? You know what's happening? And she's like, he can't afford it. He can't afford it. He can't afford it. So we took a limo from from Waco to go to A&M. And everyone always gets engaged under the Century Tree, but I wanted to get engaged under Bell Tower. And, people drive around and honk and stuff. And so we got engaged there. And then actually that happened to be the same limo driver that we had for our wedding.
Really?
So yeah, it's kind of a weird story. Yeah. It's a weird story. So,
nice.
but anyway, so I definitely surprised her with asking her to marry me because she didn't think I could afford a diamond ring.
Where are you guys living out of college?
We moved to San Antonio, where I had done the internship and took that job there. She was actually working in Waco, so she lived in Waco until we got married, and then came down here and stuff. And one of the there are moments that kind of you remember and stuff. So when I was moving into my apartment out of my parents' house and stuff, and this is probably 2 or 3 months before we got married and stuff. And my parents, because number one, I was marrying a Catholic. That's a wrong religion. So she had horns, and my wife came from the wrong socioeconomic status. I mean, we were middle class. My wife was poor, from a poor family and stuff. And so my parents actually, mainly my mom, was against me marrying her. Oh. And so when I was moving out, they refused to lift a finger. And we had already kind of had some problems with my parents before then, because like in college I had wrecked my car, and I was looking for a car, and I told them I was going to buy a Camaro, and they said, you're going to buy this Camaro. And I said, or you're not going to buy this Camaro. And I said, no, I'm going to buy that Camaro. And so they told me no, and I said, okay. And so the next day I went and bought the damn Camaro.
Yeah.
And so we were always, I was already kind of having some problems back then. And so anyway, they didn't lift a finger, and they almost didn't come to our wedding, by the way, because because I didn't ask my brother to be in the wedding. And I said, no, I'm not close enough to him. He's not going to be in the wedding. And then, so I actually had to call him to the carpet. I said, okay, we're about to print the invitations, and if you are not coming to the wedding, your name is not on the invitation.
Yeah.
And so then they decided that they were going to come to the wedding.
Were you always distant from your brother then? Was it more like because of the age?
Yeah.
You guys just didn't have that much in common, or what?
Yeah. He was diagnosed, and it was probably overdiagnosed, but I think he was with the ADHD, the attention deficit hyperactive disorder. But I mean, when he would ride his little rocking horse, he would ride it to go up and down. When he went to sleep, he would bounce his head on the pillow and stuff. He had, there is something different about him. And so, 7.5 years, we never really bonded too much and stuff, and stuff. And unfortunately he got in drugs, and, and there was nothing really I could do about it. He hung out with a bad guy. I hung out with, bad kids when I was in 3rd and 4th grade. He hung out with bad kids when he was in high school.
Yeah.
So, there's a difference there. Yeah. So, yeah. And so unfortunately I've never really been close to him.
Has he cleaned up his act since then, or
No.
is he still involved?
No, he's in prison.
He's in prison?
He's in prison.
Wow. For drug use, or was he in crime?
It's interesting.
Support the habit.
Today I was trying to figure out what the latest charge was that he was in. And I was going on these public records and stuff like that. And they wanted, sign your up and $14. And screw that. The last thing I know that he did was, he robbed a lady with a knife. He had a knife. And so it's, aggravated a robbery with a deadly weapon or something like that.
Yeah, sure.
And, with his, he had all kinds of drug arrests, and he robbed a bank once, and, paid a guy, to take him away. And, he was in jail for something else, and the Fed came and said, we've got you on video.
Yeah.
And so he'd, finished one term and went to another. He has a terrible, terrible alcohol problem. And when, one of the times when he was out, he lived close to me. And I went over there because he called me, and when he gets drunk, he would call and stuff. And so I went over there. And have you heard of the drug called Antabuse?
No.
Okay. So Antabuse is a drug where if you drink, it makes you sick.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so I went over there. He had an 18-pack by him, and he had a bucket in front of him.
Oh.
And he would drink.
Wowee.
Use the bucket and drink more. And he told me, I'm going to drink this. And before then, because I'm always a mind over matter kind of guy, I was like, that's it. I mean, he cannot control it. He cannot control it. And so So he's always had an addiction problem to many things and stuff. So he's still in, and so hopefully he's going to get it approved by the judge for this latest time, because he's been in for like 11 years.
Whoa.
Been out a few times, gotten out. Always lasts about 60 days. Yeah, and always lasts about 60 days, and then has to have an issue, and stuff, and gets thrown back in. So he's supposed to get approved by the judge to be on a year-long program to go into, and hopefully he'll get sober. Hopefully he will.
Do you ever feel like there was any responsibility on you to help him at all, or because were you insulated by the time gap where there wasn't a close bond necessarily? In the beginning, where you felt like I need to help him, or there's something I should have done.
I tried to help him,
yeah.
And in fact, I told the guy Adam, which is the guy that got him hooked on drugs in high school, to stay away from him. And I told my brother to stay away from him. Wouldn't stay away from him.
Yeah.
And the bar was always set like this for me. The bar for my brother, because he had ADHD, was set down low.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem. And I even didn't talk to my parents for 18 months one time, because I told them they were enabling him, and they didn't want to hear it. And so I said, okay, when you can have a conversation like an adult, give me a call back. And it was 18 months later.
Yeah.
So I'm a little strong. So
at what point does live fire making it? I mean, so I guess let me back out of that. I mean, as you've lived in Texas, I mean, I would assume exposure is great to, all different kinds of barbecue. But, you're a successful aerospace engineer, which you're not an aerospace engineer at this point. And we'll talk about the professional transition and how that happens, because I would assume that once you're an aerospace engineer, like that's something everybody would want to do and stay in forever, blah, blah, blah. But where does live fire start to mix into all of this and start to pique your interest?
Live fire. I need to get a charger. I hate to do this.
Doug's leaving the show, everybody. Come back tomorrow for part 2. I wish I would have downloaded the pictures of the chori pollo that I had last night. I did have chori pollo last night. That's right. I had it last night, believe it or not. Free guacamole for everybody. Half off margaritas. That's right. All right. He's back.
All right. Sorry. My computer was about to run out.
Yeah.
So my wife is an incredible cook. She's a natural cook. And I never cooked. When I was growing up, my mother made kind of 3 dishes. Chicken with rice that I'd usually have to put it in the oven because she was working. I'd, get home by myself. And then after tennis, goulash and shepherd's pie. I eat none of those to this day because I ate it all the damn time.
Right.
My dad would do steaks, pork chops. And I got to thinking about this. I ate a lot of hot dogs, which kind of goes back to my hatred of hot dogs. But I did for myself, the master chef that I was when I was growing up in high school, as well as when we got married, I made a lot of nachos, salads, and that's what I would eat all the time. My motto used to be, if it took longer to make than eat, it wasn't worth the time. Wasn't worth the time. And so I was microwave boy. And so my wife would, do stuff after college, I actually took up tennis again. So, being competitive and stuff, I started playing again, and there was a guy in town that pissed me off. And I said, okay, I'm going to get a team and we're going to beat your ass every year. And so we beat his team 10 out of 11 years after I got out of college. And so we actually, I got to play at Flushing Meadow and stuff. So the point of the matter is, when I do something, I do it 150%. And that's just the way I am. So when I got into cooking, and so in 2009, a neighbor of mine asked me I did grilling and stuff, on a Weber and, a little bit of that. And I had a Weber Smoky Mountain that I cooked on. I hated it. I actually gave it away after 3 cooks. I hated the water pan. I hated that stupid thing. So in 2009, huh?
You didn't need to use it.
Well, I tried using it and I hated it. You couldn't get to the charcoal. They needed a door on the bottom and you had to move the water pan. I'm like, this is stupid design. Hated the design. I gave it away.
You take the whole thing off the charcoal bowl.
Yeah, that just was too much. I was like, just put a damn door down there. I almost cut it myself. But anyway, so a neighbor of mine, kind of getting into barbecue, a neighbor of mine asked me to be in a charity event in September 2009. And so I said, I saw him I'm like, yeah, let me think about that, not intending to ever do anything. And then I saw him, it was one of the barbecue stars or something with Chris Lilly. And he was on TV and, and a contest and stuff. And so I'm like, okay, I'll do that once. I'll do it once. And so I called my neighbor back and I said, hey, you got a grill? And he's like, no. I'm like, okay, I'll borrow a friend of mine's grill and we'll go do this. And so we practiced, and he was OCD type A, I'm OCD type A. And so we practiced, and, he lived, I could walk to his house. He's probably, I don't know, 2 acres that way. So maybe 400 yards. So anyway, so I could walk to his house. And so we had the grill out there. And so we practiced and stuff. And then we went to that first contest, and there were 53 teams, and, it was at this big venue. They were going to have like 4,000 or 5,000 people there and stuff. And so they had the calls. This is the only event I've ever been to. They had the calls of 4 through 10 at offsite, kind of before the awards ceremony, because they didn't want to bore the 2,000 or 3,000 people that were going to be there, right, announcing these other. So, and we got in Chef's Choice, only like 11 people entered, and we got like 9. His wife got 9th, and we're like, God, this sucks. So we're smoking cigars, drinking beer when they're doing awards, and we're like, we're not even going to go to awards, and it was probably 100 feet away, and so we're like, okay, we'll go to awards, and so lo and behold, they called the second for ribs, which were his, and third for brisket, which was mine, and we got 2 gold belt buckles.
Wow.
And we finished 3rd overall, barely missed reserve grand champion, and beat all 3 barbecue restaurants in town and stuff that were in, because at the time there were only that many. And so then we started cooking together. So that's kind of how I got the bug of cooking and stuff. And so I just, researched the hell out of it and started practicing and reading a bunch of books.
What was the team at that point?
Flameworthy Barbecue. Barbecue.
Flameworthy Barbecue. All right. You've recently told this story before, so maybe I'll give the Cliff Notes version here. But you end up doing a competition without your co-pitmaster.
San Antonio Rodeo.
There was some agreement made where you were going to cook a certain recipe for the brisket. But in game time,
the team recipe.
But in crunch time, you throw caution to the wind. You cook Doug's recipe, and did you?
Not exactly true. I cooked 4 briskets. I cooked 3 the team way, and I cooked 1 my way, which 2 years before had gotten 4th place at the San Antonio Rodeo out of 300 teams.
But you're turning in Doug's brisket.
I decided. His wife decided.
Right.
even though he wasn't there, and my wife. We all said that was the best one. So
And
that
then
is totally correct.
How do you finish in that competition?
We wound up getting 16th in chicken, second in brisket, and fourth overall. If I had gotten stinking first in brisket, I'd have been reserve grand champion. But anyway,
All
so
right.
yeah.
We're
Yeah.
not harboring any bad feelings.
No. Yeah.
So great news. Second in brisket. You get to this guy's
great news.
house after he gets back in town. He's out of town for whatever reason. And he, I guess, gives you, some kind of adulation, but then also tells you that you have more or less disgraced the team. You didn't cook the agreed upon recipe. And by doing that, you've also eliminated yourself from the team because
exactly
you went rogue and cooked and turned in your brisket.
He pointed his finger at me. He said that when the coach tells you to bunt and you swing for the fences, sometimes you hit a home run, and you did. But when you made the rogue decision to cook your own recipe is when you decided you're no longer part of the team.
Wow. And that was it. He kicked you off the team, and away you go.
You kicked me off the team.
Yeah.
I said I'd have respected you as a man if we would have talked about it face to face. He said, we're talking about it right now. I said, no, Clint, you are lecturing me. And he's a speaker, but by that's his occupation. I said, no, you are lecturing me. Jennifer, get your shit. We're gone. So yeah.
If he would have, so are you saying that if you guys would have showed up at his house and he would have said, hey, let's talk about the second place brisket. I thought we agreed that you were going to turn it in. And, I understand that you did well. And my wife and your wife also taste tested, and this was the right one to turn in. But, man, as well as I did, that wasn't what you were supposed to do. So, I just can't have you on the team anymore. Would that have gone over any better? Or if he would have been like, hey, Doug, come on over.
Let's
by the way, I'm going to be kicking you off the team.
Yeah,
and we'll have a brief discussion.
That's kind of the way it was, because I was giving him. I gave him almost all the trophies. If there was a trophy that I wanted, we just got a duplicate made. So, but if we would have talked about it a little bit, I think he was telling me that was the way it was, and he wasn't the damn chief cook that day. I was.
Yeah,
he wasn't there. I'm the damn chief cook. There's only one chief cook. And I was there. I was doing it. That was my last cook on an offset. I had a phone on my chest, and every 20 minutes it would go off, and I'd go check the gator pit that we had, which was his. I'd go check it and say, okay, this is the piece of wood that I need to put on there, and I'd put it on there. And I did that every 20 minutes till 4 a.m.
Oof.
And then as my wife so greatly pointed out to me that she took it over from 4 to 6 so I could get 2 hours of sleep that day.
Yeah. So you can be sharp for turn-ins. Wow.
Yeah. For some reason, I keep forgetting that part of the story, but she reminds me all the time.
Do you think that he was just overtly jealous and didn't know how to cope? Or do you think he had do you think he had a right to part your company?
Here's the thing. It was for the San Antonio rodeo. There's the rodeo. There's a rodeo barbecue, right? He's on the executive top committee of the rodeo. And I told him when I had a few Cokes on that Saturday night and he called me, I said, they're going to give you a lot of shit because we did so well and you weren't here. And then I actually told him that night that I didn't cook. I cooked my recipe and, 3 the team recipe, and, it was better and stuff. And so he had some time to plan it out and stuff, but type A personalities and stuff. And so have I lost you?
Yeah, you're back now. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Both type A personalities.
So, type A personalities and stuff. And he's actually done really well off on his own. And it's been the best thing that's ever happened to me from a barbecue standpoint.
As you progress now as rogue cookers, how does Traeger avail itself? How does working with Head Country avail itself? It's all, really name brand stuff in the industry.
Right. So, this was 2014 when I started cooking by myself, January of 2014. 14. My first cook-off on a Traeger, which I bought at a kiosk in the mall. I figured, heck, $1,000. They were the first one. I'll buy it. It can't be, I'll sell it on Craigslist if I don't know. My first cook-off, it was one of the Western Wood, the Western Wood chunks, series and stuff. So they had a series of 3 of them and stuff. My first one, I cooked it on barrels. Wind blew 30 miles an hour. White smoke, billow smoke, tastes like charcoal. I said, that'll never happen again. Bought a Traeger. The next contest, because it was a series of 3 and 3 cook-offs. The next one I finished, I don't know, it was like 14th in ribs and 16th in brisket out of 150, 160 teams or so. I'm like, shoot, I can do this. This will work. Pellet cookers will work. And I think I was the first one to cook on pellet cookers exclusively in Texas, best I know. So I was like, this is fine. Even though I staggered it on one pit, I cooked chicken ribs and brisket on one pit. A little Texas, or a Pro 34, if you know the Pro 34, it was the precursor to that. And so the next cook-off I did pretty well too, and I wound up finishing in the top, I don't know, 3rd or 25%, even though I stunk in that first one. And so that's when I started cooking on Traegers. And so the first year at the Houston Rodeo, I think I got asked to cook for a guy who was with me when at that San Antonio Rodeo, when I cooked by myself. He was there next to me, and I won't go into that long story, but he had actually asked me to cook for the Jack because he got in a pissing match with his cookers over the trophies. And so I cooked the Jack with him. And so then he asked me to cook the Houston Rodeo. So I cooked the Houston Rodeo, and I got, I don't know, it's like 30th in brisket or something like that. And he goes, okay, I'll give you one more year. So that next year I cooked on a Traeger and won. Yep. So yeah, oh yeah, no, it's one of those deals. And I said, that's fine. I'll do one more year. And I cooked chicken and then wound up winning. I beat Darren Worth by like 0.2 points, the GOAT in my book, but beat him in chicken. And so then that's when Traeger took notice of me. They used my name on the press release for the American Royal, went up and cooked the American Royal, got the top Traeger cooker up there, one of their awards, and then went to the Jack and got first in Chef's Choice in cooking steak and potatoes. We did it, and we put it on a $1 plate that my wife got at the dollar store.
Nice.
So, but anyway, so we got first place. I mean, we weren't even paying attention. It was one of those times, where they call the team name a couple of times. We're like, what, us? We weren't even paying attention. So, but it was, yeah. So then after that happened, Traeger said, okay, we're going to get a consulting arrangement with you and, get you here to teach classes and do events and stuff like that. So that's when the relationship started with Traeger. So that would have been fall of 2015. And then, of course, my first exposure to you was right after the Houston Rodeo. That was probably end of February, beginning of March, sort of time frame when I interviewed with you after that, and that was during the time when you were trying to get into Texas. You were trying to break away a little more from the the NBN and Florida and KCBS stuff. So it kind of coincided with your goals that year. So that's when I came on board with you as well. So I was on board with you, and then Head Country probably brought me on the year after. And I've used Head Country since day one. My friend Willie Dillon introduced it to me back in 2008 when I started, doing, some barrel cooking and stuff. And I've used it ever since, all the time.
Where did you make the change from aerospace engineer into what you're doing now? And why?
Yeah, I was, I'd kind of transitioned. I got my professional engineering designation and stuff. And, so, and I still keep that because that was too damn hard to get. But I was at a different job, and you know the difference between sales and marketing. Right?
Yeah.
It's two ends of the same string is the way I like to think of it. Right.
Right.
You're both attached, but you've got different, you're moving together. But all right. So my job, they said they were going to increase my marketing budget by 100%. And they were going to also increase my sales budget by 100%. You know, and I had international distributors in Germany, Japan, Korea, and, you know, and Italy. And I'm like, I'm trying to break into the FDA. You know, I'm just trying to get our software approved by the FDA. I'm like, just because you're going to spend 100% more on marketing, which wasn't much at all anyway, you know, maybe it went from 20,000 to 40,000. And I'm like, that's not the way it's going to work. I'm not going to increase my sales from 4 million to 8 million, you know, or whatever it was at the time. And so I knew, and I argued with them for many months, and they weren't budging on this. And so I was looking to do something different. And then a guy that worked for me in Houston when I was at that small company that I grew from 3 to 19, we had a Houston office. And so he was my head software sales guy over there. He had been looking to do something with me. And so he called on this business broker. He worked for LexisNexis, if you've heard of LexisNexis,
of course.
information gathering. Yeah, so he was in sales for LexisNexis. He called on corporate 500 companies. Basically, when they wanted to go acquire they used LexisNexis to find the litigious nature and, you know, the size and all this stuff. And so he called on a business broker, and he's like, hey, this sounds interesting. You know, I can't believe this is legal. And I liked it because it was a variety thing. You know, I like variety. I don't like to do the same thing. And that's kind of what I found out in the engineering world, is kind of doing the same thing and stuff. Even though I liked it, I was in front of the computer. I wasn't, you know, talking to people and stuff. And so he basically said, hey, let's start this business brokerage. So we started a business brokerage in 2005 together. He moved from Houston over here, and then we started it together. And then we were actually part of a franchise, and we got certified right away. And you know, you have to be a year and get some transactions under your belt. And, you know, it's basically it's a eat what you kill. You know, if it's commission only. So we did make money the first 8 or 9 months or so after starting the business. And, you know, we invested about 100,000 in it, and, you know, 50 each, and you know, didn't make any money the first year for the most part. And so, but and it's a high turnover industry. About a third of the people turn over every year, because, you know, not everyone can survive a year without making any income.
Yeah. I don't know anybody that can survive a year without making any income, to be honest.
Well, these days it's kind of true. You got to be younger, right? So, but
gotta be used to having nothing.
So anyway, right,
yeah.
So, but anyway, so you know, we've done pretty well, and so we do that, and I do equipment appraisals as well. We have another company that does equipment appraisals that's kind of technical in nature, so you have to have, you know, some technical knowledge of equipment and stuff. And so that's kind of where I keep my technical juices flowing.
Do you think, or do you have any desire to do a barbecue job full time? For instance, you see like Chad Ward or BBQ. There's a handful of others that have managed to make barbecue full time. Is it something that if it presented itself, you would look at, or would that ruin something?
I've talked to Chad about doing that, because, you know, there's been several times where we've been kind of at the end of our, you know, we've had $200 in the, you know, the corporate bank account, and we weren't sure, you know, if we were going to be able to make rent next month and stuff. And, but, you know, that's come to pass about 2 or 3 times. And I don't think I want to travel that much. Number one, you know, I think there would be a position with Traeger, you know, whether it's even on the engineering side, or, you know, to help them with those sorts of things, and, you know, and do events or et cetera. But, you know, as we've talked about, it would turn a passion into work.
Yep.
And just like you said, it would change your mindset. Right now it's fun. I develop recipes for Traeger, you know, Head Country. And so it's a lot of fun. It would change it. Plus I'd have to be on the road. You know, before the COVID, I'd have to be on the road. Heck, last year we did 27 weekends of barbecue.
Yeah.
27. And I don't even cook that often. And, you know, let's say I cook 12 to 15. So there's 12 to 15 plus another, you know, 12 or 13, 14, 15 with Traeger. Events, training classes. I did, I think, 10 classes last year.
Yeah.
So
and you're in half a year at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So it's, you know, it's taken on a life of its own every year. It's different, and it's great, you know, from the standpoint of, the exposure of what I get, and I do truly appreciate you bringing me on and interviewing me, and being the first correspondent and stuff like that. That's been great, and it's been more notoriety than because I meet people like I met Craig Hansen of Ace at the NBBQA where you went to, and he's like, "Oh, I know you from the Barbecue Central show," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's pretty cool." So that happens more often than you think when you go to those type of events and stuff. So, but so it's been a lot of fun, and but I still make a good living doing my business brokerage.
Yep. This is Doug Scheiding. He's the longest running embedded correspondent right there in Texas, and contracting with Traeger, doing work with Head Country. I mean, what a story he has to tell here, and hopefully you've enjoyed it. Doug, I really appreciate you coming on and talking all about it from beginning to where we're at today. And, of course, like I've told everybody else, we've been chopping it up in some form or fashion here over the last, 5-6 years. And, you really anchoring the embedded correspondence portion has been really mission critical, and not only getting that segment started, but really growing it into the successful segments that it has become, over the last handful of years. It's something that all the listeners look forward to, and getting a different perspective from somebody that's in the industry in a different way than me. It's unbelievable. Whether you like hot dogs or not, totally irrelevant. Whether they touch your grills or not, totally irrelevant. Whether you hate kids or not, totally irrelevant. Whatever.
No.
That's fine. But, man, you have really been a great relationship of mine, both on the internet and off the internet, and truly grateful for everything that you've done for me and the show, and outside of the show as well. So I just wanted to tell you that, and look forward to chopping it up again with you next month.
Absolutely, and I truly appreciate it. It's helped me open up a lot of doors being a barbecue correspondent for this, Barbecue Central show. And so it's been great. And so I love the group that we have now, and I think we have good chemistry and stuff. So I'm really excited about going forward with it too. And continuing.
Doug, thanks again so much.
You bet. Thank you.
There he is, Doug Scheiding from Rogue Cookers. And that is Doug's origin story. Is that enough for you? We're going on 3 hours and 16 minutes worth of shows right here. They'll all be chopped up at podcast. Derek Riches will be first up on Wednesday, but by the time you're hearing this, it will already have come to pass. So thanks again to everybody that stopped through the show this evening. Actually, yesterday, as we close it out here, 16 minutes past a new day on Wednesday. All the way back in the first hour, we thank Derek Riches from DerekRiches.com. Rusty Monson started out that second hour and brought us through to the third. He is the pitmaster of Salt City Barbecue. Look for his food truck when it launches here, whenever this COVID crap stops, and he can take his necessary tests to get rocking and rolling. Great origin story from Rusty. Appreciate his sharing. And, of course, closing it out with Doug Scheiding from Rogue Cookers, longest-running embedded correspondent out of Texas. And what a story he has to weave. Wow. Unbelievable. As we are closing out the month of origin stories, and as I go back and listen, once we started getting through, a good handful of these, I've come to find out that the embedded correspondents and the show regulars are connected in many more ways than I even realized. Bringing that whole small world thing to the forefront once again. Hope everybody enjoyed this past month of origin stories. They were absolutely fabulous. Lots of great feedback, so we'll see how these might continue as bonus content into the future. But we're locked and loaded with a new month of shows coming up with Malcolm Reed and Sam the Cooking Guy next Tuesday. We're actually all locked up for the whole month of November, believe it or not. Until next Tuesday, let me say this, September 11th, 2001. I will never forget. Until next Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, this is your program host and proud U.S. American, Greg Rempe. Good night now.
This is Dino Dan from Cypress, California, and you're watching the Barbecue Central Show.